In the still darkness of August 23rd, a chilling tragedy unfolded at an Ohio campground. Authorities say Marcus and Ruth Miller, convinced God was commanding them, leapt into the lake to prove their faith. Hours later, Marcus returned to the water alone. By morning, Ruth placed her young son Vincent on a golf cart, drove him to the dock, and drowned him, claiming she was giving him to God. Later, she plunged a golf cart carrying her 3 teenage children into the lake. They escaped, but the act drew first responders who uncovered the horror. Ruth spoke in broken, unsettling phrases as deputies pieced together the truth. Vincent's body was recovered that evening, Marcus's the next morning, and what began as a desperate quest for divine affirmation ended in tragic death for a small child and his father. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And this story we're about to do is extremely sad. But we've seen things like it before in the past, and I want to go back in time. Remember Andrea Yates, who drowned her children? This was someone who was mentally ill. This is someone who was suffering. But when she drowned those children systematically, one at a time, as it turns out, she believed she was saving her children. And that was the testimony from the experts who evaluated her. And as a result, Andrea Yates was found not guilty, but not guilty by reason of insanity, despite the fact of what she did to her children. There was another case we covered on Court TV. Deanna Laney was her name. She didn't drown her children. She used rocks, and one by one systematically smashed the heads of her young children. The youngest survived, but was severely disabled afterwards. She went to trial as well. And once again, the testimony from the experts, getting into the mind of this killer, because she did kill her children, was that she believed that she was saving them from Satan and delivering those children to God by smashing their heads with a rock. And the jury agreed. Deanna Laney was found not guilty, but not guilty by reason of insanity. Well, now we get to this case. We've got Ruth Miller, who's accused of killing her son, just 4 years old, again by drowning. And again, the defense in this case will be that she was legally insane at the time. She could not understand or appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct. Basically not knowing the difference between right and wrong, and thinking you're doing something good when you're doing something bad. You think you are saving your child when you are killing your child. And that's what this trial will be about for her. Now, in most of these cases, in the ones in the past, it's up to the expert to do the forensic evaluation of the accused murderer, to get into her mind, to understand what she was thinking at the time. Well, in this case, it will happen like that, but there'll be something else that the jury will have an opportunity to see, because she was recorded at the scene. We now have body camera. So responding to the scene, you get to see and hear the defendant close in time to when the killing took place. And that's a big difference. To me, that's a huge difference. You'll still have your experts who will testify and do their evaluations. But in addition to that, the jury will be able to see and hear her on the day of the killing, to understand what she was saying, what she was doing. So what we're going to do right now is play for you that video of the responding officers. What is Ruth Miller saying in the aftermath of taking the life of her 4-year-old son and attempting to take the lives of her other children? Let's watch.
gave him to God.
You gave him to God today?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake, and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real, and he loves you. He really does love you. He loves you. And I doubted him. I doubted him so many times, but I am to tell you he is coming soon. He is coming very soon. Prepare your hearts. The end is close. And I'm for sure supposed to tell you that he does love you. Okay?
Ma'am, can you explain to me what happened? Who did you throw in the water?
I gave my son to God.
Your son?
Yes.
Where's your husband?
He went for a walk this morning.
And you haven't seen him
He
since?
didn't ever come back. And we went to the boat and his clothes were there. And God told me he's in the lake and a fish swallowed him. And you're actually supposed to go look for him in the bottom of the lake. And you will find the fish. And you will find my husband. And then you will believe. But ye of your little faith that did not believe before seeing.
Okay.
So send people down to the bottom of the lake looking for a fish. That has my husband.
How old's your son that's in the lake?
4. He's sweet. I love him. I gave him.
Okay. 7940 Central. We're out with the mother. She is advising that she threw her 4-year-old son in the lake to give him to God. Affirm.
So do you believe?
Awesome.
Okay. They are there. And you'll find them. And you'll find them. Please look at them. It really does. I saw miracles. I doubted him. And then pain came back to me. My husband and I both doubted him. And pain came back to me.
I need to know where your husband's at.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
He's in a fish.
Yes.
There's no fish large enough on an atwood to swallow your husband.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
Okay.
I thought your husband went for a walk.
Yeah, and then we came to the boat, and his clothes were laying on the boat.
Okay.
Tan pants and cream shirt and flip-flops.
Do you have a cell phone?
It's in the camper.
It's in the camper. Where's your camper at?
I think it's,
Area 3?
I think so. Yeah. It's like a tannish camper.
It's a tannish camper. You don't know what lot number it is?
No.
Well, we really need to verify your husband's still with us.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, he's actually just go out in the bottom of the lake.
Well, I can't go in the bottom of the lake. So
Do you have scuba divers?
Yeah, we're going to have to call divers in to go to the bottom of the lake.
Please do.
And you're saying
The best ones there are. Because this is a miracle from God. You will see. You will see.
you're saying your 4-year-old son's down there too?
He's with God.
Where's his body at?
I don't know.
Where did you throw him in the water at?
Off of the dock at the causeway.
Where the bike was today?
Where the boat was?
Yeah, where the boat.
Okay.
I know.
When there's supposed to be ones coming out there?
I think there was one.
Does anybody have a glass of water?
We can get you water.
Please.
What's up?
Thank you.
We're right now we're gonna walk up to the squad, okay? That's what we're going to do. We're gonna put you in the back of the squad.
You will find my husband.
Okay, but you're gonna sit down in the back of the squad for us, okay?
Can I actually just sit with my children and have water?
Yeah, we can bring your children over.
I would love a glass of water.
Let's go up in this squad over
Well,
here.
my children out here.
We'll bring them over in a minute. Let me go check you out. Yeah, we're gonna get it. Kyle wants to go get you one.
You guys send a dive team over that way then?
Yeah, we're going to
They're supposed to bring one in over.
Which dock is that so I can tell my dispatch?
That's cluster dock, the center cluster dock.
Center
Or
cluster.
on the causeway. Causeway center cluster dock.
Causeway Center Cluster Dock. 7940 Central. You said it's the Causeway Center Dock, right?
Causeway center.
Causeway Center Dock. 7940 Central. The mother is advising that her boat is located if you just want to log at the Causeway Center Dock, and that's where she threw the child in the water. She's also now saying that the husband's in the water. So you just want to log that and notify the dive team. The Rangers are heading over that way right now.
But we have to go somewhere where it's not too hard on my knee.
So your knee won't hurt you. Please trust me.
Okay.
It won't hurt you.
Okay.
It won't hurt you. You're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. God, please show this woman that it is true. But I'm telling you, people are doubting. It is getting harder for me to stay strong. Please show her that it is true what I'm telling you. That there is a fish in the bottom of the lake. Please let her take me to sit with my children under the tree that you have created. Please, Lord.
Hey, listen.
You guys just want to bring her over to that one?
Yeah, we'll take her.
Okay. So we can be closer to the rest of everybody else.
We are. We need to have to make it first. But I
Can I just sit here?
Here, have a seat right here. We'll go get your children as soon as they're done.
No, I want to go
Right here.
What are the kids saying now?
I don't know if they because they've asked them if there's a little brother and dad or not. I don't know.
Okay.
That's it. At this point.
The miracles are true. And we doubted too, but they are true. They are. And it's amazing. I can't even tell you enough. Do you remember when Jesus was on the cross?
Yeah, I remember.
And he put his arms out and he said, "Forgive them, for they know not
Yeah,
what
you
they
told me
do."
that already.
Yes. They didn't know. They didn't know.
I guess. All right.
You are to trust. It's all about trust. It's hard because he does things in mysterious ways.
Sure.
And it's hard because we want to just believe our earthly ways. It is hard. Is part of you happy? And is part of you happy? Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, my God.
That's clear.
This is a very confusing situation for investigators coming upon this and speaking with this woman. You can tell, like, they're being very patient, but they're trying to get to the bottom of what happened here. What did happen here? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining me tonight, former police lieutenant and trial attorney Rick King. Also joining me, criminal defense attorney, former head New Jersey County prosecutor Bob Bianchi, and national parenting and family relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Okay, Rick, let me start with you. Investigators, police showing up, the ranger, trying to get to the bottom of this. The tone is very unusual for a case where may involve the murder of a child. But it seems like it's taking some time to try to get and peel back the layers here.
Yeah. As I watched this, like my first question was, as they're walking her up from the water and they're talking to her, and there's two guys holding her arms, and I'm wondering, who are those two guys? Because, and I wrote this down because I thought it was significant. She said, I gave them to God. I gave him to God. And then the officer said, you gave him to God. And I thought to myself, that's inviting elaboration. And then she said, yes. And then he said, what do you mean by that? And that's a direct probe designed to elicit information, possibly criminally culpable information about the situation. And I thought, hey, there should be Miranda here. And I'm not sure anything she says following that is even going to come in.
That's interesting. Bob, trying to get to the bottom of this entire situation, because the husband is nowhere to be found, but he's in the water. And trying to, for investigators here who are responding because of the surviving children who were able to get away and then bring law enforcement there, this is a very confusing situation to try to figure out what exactly is going on.
Vinny, been there on actually something almost exactly like this. And this is one of the reasons why I personally, when I ran the prosecutor's office, had our lawyers immediately contacted so they could either get to the scene as quickly as possible or be on the phone with the police. And this is a perfect example of why. Immediately, any lawyer listening to this is thinking about a courtroom, thinking about summation, thinking about the jury charges, and they're looking at diminished capacity or potential insanity, and they want to make sure the cops ask the right questions as soon as possible, like my colleague indicates, before the person invokes, and you don't get that information. So while it's chaotic, they've got to ask questions, goal-oriented behavior. What happened? How did it happen? When did it happen? Because all this goes to the mental state of the individual who's already confessed to having committed a crime.
Dr. Sue, when I'm looking at the tone of everything that is happening here, this is a very confusing, I believe, for investigators to try to get to the bottom of it. But their tone and the tone of Ruth Miller is what really sticks out to me in this situation, in light of what we know, that there are 2 bodies in the water.
Exactly, Vinny. And her tone is very, very calm. It's very controlled. It's almost as if she is possibly possessed by something. It looks as though perhaps something's taken her over. But why? What is it? Where's it from? Why was it only the 4-year-old that went into the lake? What was going on with the husband? What was going on with the husband and the child? Why were the other children not involved in this? Her demeanor is so calm, and we often see this in individuals that have mental health problems.
Rick, to me, understanding the husband's role in all of this, right? He's not there. Is he a potential victim here? Or is he perhaps a potential perpetrator here? This is not going to be easy necessarily to figure out.
No. And when you take that and couple it with whether her statements come in or not, because if the husband's on the bottom of the lake along with the young boy, did he take him down there? Is that going to be, would that have potentially be part of what's happening? You don't know, because you don't know what actually happened. And if you lose her statements, is that much more important. Now, I don't know from a strategy perspective, if you want those statements, if you're claiming that she's insane, I don't know. However, that's got to be part of the analysis as you're asking the questions from the law enforcement perspective. You have to know kind of what you're asking and why.
And Bob, the most important witnesses for all this may be the surviving children.
Yeah, absolutely, because one of the things that the psychiatric testimony and the forensic testimony is going to be goal-oriented behavior. That's the term that's used, both before, during, and after. And the children are going to be indicating that she purposefully attempted to harm them as well after the 4-year-old was killed, and of course after the husband was killed as well. And it's that level of continuing conduct that prosecutors are going to argue through the children, which apparently they're going to be testifying that she was doing this intentionally, that she had that goal-oriented behavior, and that's going to be a significant factor in favor of the prosecution. It's not just about whether she's mentally ill. It's a question of whether or not she's legally responsible under the mental health laws of that state.
Let's take a listen to the sheriff here talking about the father.
His clothes off to attempt to swim out to prove his faith and likely drown accidentally.
What are your thoughts about the husband, the father, Dr. Sue?
Look, I think you're going to learn a lot as we continue to see this case develop. I don't know exactly what to think of the father. Perhaps the father went out there to save his son and then drowned, or he was pushed in. I don't know what was going on there. This is all speculation at this time. But, you know, we do know that the mother was harming possibly the other children as well. Where was he in all of this? And I think it brings up all of these questions that we will see unfold as we go through this.
Yeah, and what makes this much different than the Andrea Yates case is that the husband was nowhere to be found and they pointed the finger at him as causing some of the mental problems that Andrea Yates was suffering from. Here, the husband is gone, so he won't necessarily be a part of the trial.
I gave him to God.
You gave him to God?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake, and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real, and he loves you. He really does love you. He loves you. And I doubted him. I doubted him so many times, but I am to tell you he is coming soon. He is coming very soon. Prepare your hearts. The end is close. And I'm for sure supposed to tell you that he does love you. Okay?
Ma'am, can you explain to me what happened? Who did you throw in the water?
I gave my son to God.
Your son?
Yes.
Where's your husband?
He went for a walk this morning.
And you haven't seen him
He
since?
didn't ever come back. And we went to the boat and his clothes were there. And God told me he's in the lake and a fish swallowed him. And you're actually supposed to go look for him in the bottom of the lake. And you will find the fish. And you will find my husband. And then you will believe. But ye of your little faith that did not believe before seeing.
Okay.
So send people down to the bottom of the lake looking for a fish. That has my husband.
How old's your son that's in the lake?
4. He's sweet. I love him. I gave him to God.
Okay. 7/9/40 Central. We're out with the mother. She is advising that she threw her 4-year-old son in the lake to give him to God. A firm.
But I wouldn't have believed today. So do you believe?
Awesome.
Okay. They are there. And you'll find them. And you'll find them. Please look. It does. It truly does. I saw miracles. I doubted him. And then pain came back to me. My husband and I both doubted him. And pain came back to me.
I need to know where your husband's at.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
He's in a fish.
Yes.
There's no fish large enough on an atwood to swallow your husband.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
Okay.
I thought your husband went for a walk.
Yeah, and then we came to the boat, and his clothes were laying on the boat.
Okay.
tan pants and cream shirt and flip-flops.
Do you have a cell phone?
It's in the camper.
It's in the camper. Where's your camper at?
I think it's,
Area 3?
I think so. Yeah. It's like a tannish camper.
It's a tannish camper. You don't know what lot number it is?
No.
'Cause we really need to verify your husband's still with us.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Well, he's actually just go out in the bottom of the lake.
Well, I can't go in the bottom of the lake. So
Do you have scuba divers?
Yeah, we're gonna have to call divers in to go to the bottom of the lake.
Please do.
And you're saying
Get the best ones there are, because this is a miracle from God, and you will see. You will see.
you're saying your 4-year-old son's down there too?
He's with God.
Where's his body at?
I don't know.
Where did you throw him in the water at?
Off of the dock at the causeway.
Where the bike was today?
Where the boat was?
Yeah, where the boat is.
Okay.
Please. I know.
When there's supposed to be ones coming out there?
I think there was one.
Does anybody have a glass of water?
We can get you water.
Please.
What's
Thank you.
we're right now we're gonna walk up to the squad, okay? That's what we're going to do. We're gonna put you in the back of the squad.
You will find my husband.
Okay, but you're gonna sit down in the back of the squad for us, okay?
Can I actually just sit with my children? Yeah. And have water?
Yeah, we can bring your children over.
I would love a glass of water.
Let's go up in this squad over here.
My children out here.
We'll bring them over in a minute. Let me go check you out. Yeah, we're gonna get it. Kyle went to go get you one.
You guys send the dive team over that way then?
They're supposed to bring one in over
Which
here.
dock is that so I can tell my dispatch?
That's cluster dock, the center cluster dock.
Center
Or
cluster.
On the causeway. The causeway center cluster dock.
Causeway Center Cluster Dock. 7940 Central. You said it's the Causeway Center Dock, right?
Causeway center.
Causeway Center Dock. 7940 Central. The mother is advising that her boat is located if you just want to log at the Causeway Center Dock, and that's where she threw the child in the water. She's also now saying that the husband's in the water. If you just want to log that and notify the dive team, the Rangers are heading over that way right now.
It's not too hard on my knee.
So your knee won't hurt you. Please trust me.
Okay.
It won't hurt you.
Okay.
It won't hurt you. You're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. God, please show this woman that it is true what I'm telling you. People are doubting. It is getting harder for me to stay strong. Please show her that it is true what I'm telling you. That there is a fish in the bottom of the lake. Please let her take me to sit with my children under the tree that you have created. Please, Lord.
Okay, let's go.
You guys just want to bring her over to that one?
Yeah, we'll take her over
Okay.
that one.
So we can be closer to the rest of everybody else.
Have a seat right here. We'll go get your children as soon as they're done.
No, I want to go right here.
What are the kids saying now?
I don't know if they've asked them if there's a little brother and dad or not. I don't know if they have.
Okay.
That's it. At this point.
The miracles are true. And these two we doubted too, but they are true. They are. It's amazing. I can't tell you enough. Do you remember when Jesus was on the cross?
Yeah, I remember.
And he put his arms out and he said, forgiven them, for they know not
Yeah,
what
you
they
told
do.
me that already.
Yes. They didn't know. They didn't know.
I get it. Right.
You are to trust. It's all about trust. It's hard because he does things in mysterious ways.
Sure.
And it's hard because we want to just believe our earthly ways. It is hard. Is part of you happy? And is part of you happy? Yes.
Go ahead. That's clear.
On or about August the 23rd of 2025, here in Tuscarawas County, that the grand jury found that there was probable cause to believe that Ruth R. Miller did purposefully cause the death of a child victim designated as child victim 1, who was under the age of 13 years of age at the time of the commission of the offense.
There is the defendant, Ruth Miller, in court hearing the charge against her. Here are the rest of the charges. So you have, obviously, the aggravated murder of the 4-year-old son, but you also have murder, felonious assault as the lesser included there. Then you've got child endangering of the 15-year-old daughter and 3 counts of domestic violence for the 15-year-old daughter and 2 18-year-old sons. That's when she is driving erratically with the children in the golf cart heading towards the water. Now, take a look. You're going to see her attorney, Ian Friedman, who's a regular guest on this program, enter the official plea for Ruth Miller. Take a listen.
I'm also aware, Ms. Miller, that your attorneys earlier had filed on your behalf, as required by law, if someone intends to do this, a notice of the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. I'm going to turn to Attorney Friedman just to confirm that's in fact the plea that should be entered in this case.
That is in fact the plea that we are entering by right at this time.
Okay. And that's what will be done. I will enter a plea that on your behalf of not guilty by reason of insanity.
Well, that was fast. I mean, out of the box, not guilty by reason of insanity is the plea. It seems obvious to all of us, but sometimes in the legal world, things take a little bit longer to develop. Not here. Let me ask you, Dr. Sue, because this is a case where the husband ended up in the water as well. Is it possible that both could be suffering from the same delusion?
I mean, Vinny, anything is could be happening here, right? They could be both delusional, believed in the same thing, were brainwashed by the same people who took them here. I think what's going to end up happening here is they're going to be claiming something along the lines of religious psychosis, or that she has some form of schizophrenia, where she's having delusions, is hearing voices. Is it possible that both of them were engaged in this kind of, cultish kind of mentality? I just don't know. There's too many unanswered questions here. But I promise you that you will see that that's probably what they're going to be arguing here. And I'm sure that people are thinking this right now. And I don't know if the panel is either. Is she faking what she's doing there, or is it real?
Yeah, Bob, how do you get to the bottom of that? Is she malingering? Is she really suffering from this delusion? I mean, everything we saw that she did in the response here, putting her hands on the officers as they respond, taking a knee with someone else who was trying to help her. How do you get to the bottom of that? And is there a chance that prosecutors could agree that she's not guilty by reason of insanity?
Vinny, on the case that I was just talking to you about, we agreed it was a not guilty by reason of insanity, but there were reasons why. There was a previous mental health history. Is there one here? There was a previous diagnosis of a known psychiatric illness, which is required under the law before you can avail yourself of this defense. And in my case, there was. And the person did not get their medication that they were supposed to have. They decompensated, and they clearly didn't understand the difference between right or wrong. But I see this case a lot differently here. I see her making admissions. Now, she can be delusional. She can have a mental illness, but that does not a get out of free jail card. You have to show she didn't know the difference between right or wrong. I find her conduct to be manipulative. I hope that they asked more questions to get to that part, whether she knew it was right or wrong. But I do note that she indicates here and makes a very telling statement that's going to go up on a big poster board with the prosecutors. People will tell me that I'm crazy. What she's saying by that is she recognizes that the actions that she did, the thing that she did, would be perceived by others to be crazy, which is an exact opposite of what the insanity defense is, because you can't appreciate the difference between right or wrong, but yet she recognizes it. So she could have all the delusions in the world, all the religious crazy in her head. That's not a get out of jail free card. She makes a number of admissions here. And by the way, the whole husband thing, call me curious. They wrote that off as an accident, not undetermined, yet to be seen. I find it very suspicious, but Vinny, I'm getting old, so maybe I'm getting a little too suspect of people. Yeah. Nevertheless, it's not a good look for her.
Rick, he's got his closing argument ready, Bob does already, just from that statement that people are going to call me crazy.
I see that Bob and I often are on the other side. He has a prosecutorial edge like somebody else I know, Vinny. And I look at it from a different perspective, from the defense side, which is why the very first thing that I brought up in this is, do those statements even come in? That's important because just like he said, and I recognize that statement that where she says, people might find me crazy, is suspect. And I get that. But also, don't forget, there's going to be, the state has the opportunity to put her in front of their witnesses, or in front of their experts and doctors to check the veracity of her claim to be insane at the time. So they get their chance to evaluate her as well.
Dr. Sue Kornbluth, how important is it for you to know the history of what was going on in this family and what was happening with these children?
It is extremely important because I think who's ever evaluating her, and I'm sure she's been evaluated many times by now, that they are going to look back into the history to see what her parenting skills were with these children. They're probably going to interview the children as well to get a better understanding of what was going on in this home. How does she discipline? What should she do? Was there abuse going on in here? Did that lead her to become insane? Was there other things going in the house with the husband? Was there domestic violence? What was going on? What led her to do this? Because I'm going to tell you what she's presenting right now on this video is showing the world that she has some kind of mental disorder going on. But as we've seen in other cases, Vinny, manipulative people can really be manipulative and hide even psychosis sometimes and fake it. And that's where I'm going with this right now. But the evaluators, the forensic evaluators, psychological evaluators, I hope do their job and get to the bottom of this.
Ruth Miller. She is having a hearing approximately 20 minutes from where she allegedly drowned her 4-year-old son. And she allegedly killed her husband, Marcus, by way of drowning as well. Now, Ruth Miller is also accused of 2 counts of domestic violence and 1 count of child endangerment, because police say she also tried to drown her 3 teenage children while driving with them in a golf cart. We got some body camera video of her alleged confession to the drowning after she says she spoke with God. Let's listen.
I gave him to God today.
You gave him to God today?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake, and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real, and he loves you. He really does love you. He loves you. And I doubted him. I doubted him so many times, but I am to tell you he is coming soon. He is coming very soon. Prepare your hearts. The end is close. And I'm for sure supposed to tell you that he does love you.
Oh my. Now, Ruth Miller pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity at her arraignment 3 weeks ago. Her attorney told the court that she was suffering from a mental health episode. The attorney claims that Miller did not understand the consequences of her actions. So we're wondering, will her mental health episode be enough for her to get bond? That's what she wants. She wants to be out on bond. Let's bring in our guests. Rick Grundy and Mario Gallucci. Rick, to you first here. Your thoughts on this woman getting out?
I don't think that's going to happen, Julie. She's obviously a clear danger to the society, not to mention herself. So I don't see that as a potential. I'm hopeful that they will get into her personal situation enough to find a suitable way to incarcerate her or keep her in a lockdown facility and address the mental health issues that she's having. I'm questioning whether the investigation is ongoing with respect to her husband, because I think that may well lead to broadening the charges. But I think we probably just scratched the surface of what was going on here with this young lady.
Right, Rick. Mario, we heard defense counsel already seeming to lay the groundwork for what's ahead. Your thoughts on what he said to the court?
So, I've done these cases. It's an NGRI defense. First, you have to have her evaluated by a doctor to make sure that she actually has a mental disease or defect, which, to us who just watched what we watched, it's pretty obvious. But we're not doctors. So you have to have a doctor make an evaluation, find out if she does have a mental disease or defect, and then you have to argue to the jury that other than that mental disease or defect, she would never have committed this crime. And what people don't understand is if she wins on the not guilty by reason of insanity, it doesn't mean that she's now free to go out into society. It just means, like Rick just said, that she wouldn't be housed in a prison. She would be housed in a hospital where she would be treated and taken care of for probably the rest of her life. And this is the exact case where you would want an NGRI defense. I mean, she really believed that the end was near and Jesus was coming, and the officers at the scene were treated her wonderfully. They were outstanding the way they sat there and they listened to her, and they did everything they can to make her feel safe. They did an outstanding job. Outstanding.
Yeah, they really did. You're right, Mario. Thank you for that. Let's take a listen to Ruth Miller. Again, this is another portion of the body camera footage telling police what happened to her husband.
Ma'am, can you explain to me what happened? Who did you throw in the water?
I gave my son to God.
Your son?
Yes.
Where's your husband?
He went for a walk this morning.
And you haven't seen him
He
since?
didn't ever come back. And we went to the boat and his clothes were there. And God told me he's in the lake and a fish swallowed him. And you're actually supposed to go look for him in the bottom of the lake. And you will find the fish and you will find my husband.
I need to know where your husband's at.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
He's in a fish.
Yes.
There's no fish large enough on an atwell to swallow your husband.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
Oh, okay. Rick Grundy, it seems that the husband's death is a little more unclear than the son's. The 4-year-old child being allegedly thrown in the lake or being commanded to jump in the lake. Most people, I think, can see how the drowning happened. With the dad, it's a little bit unclear. We know he didn't get swallowed by a fish, as she's saying, but tell me, do you think prosecutors may have some difficulty with this? I've seen reports that she commanded him to jump in the lake, and then we know there was evidence she said he went for a walk, and then people have speculated, was he trying to save the son? Your thoughts on the husband's death, please, Rick.
I think what's going to be telltale here, and what we need to, I hope the authorities are clear in this mindset, is that the autopsy of finding the husband, and then an autopsy is what's going to tell the day with respect to, I mean, and something as obvious as a bullet wound or head injuries or some kind of trauma that was inflicted on him prior to going into the lake, if in fact he's found there. And again, as this develops and this woman receives some treatment, etc., and the defense attorney may divulge further information if she in fact becomes more candid with respect to the situation with her husband. It may become part of a plea deal.
Yeah, very, very sad. Hopefully, those teenage children who survive this event are getting the mental health help that they need and counseling and family support. Now with dad being gone and mom being gone in jail for at least the meantime.
Ruth, I have reviewed the exhibits that are here. Yeah, I reviewed all of them, other than the report from Heartland, which I'm already familiar with Heartland Behavioral Health Care. And from those reports, from the testimony that has been presented here today, I think certain things are clear. I think that the evidence has been established, and I would find by clear and convincing evidence that Ruth Miller is a person with a mental illness. There may be some differences of opinion as to what that specific mental illness is, but the statute does not require that there be a unanimous decision as to what that specific illness is. It's clear from everyone who has testified here that you do suffer from a mental illness. I'm then to consider the proper placement for you. And in this case, considering the need to consider the least restrictive setting, as well as keeping in mind public safety, that is also an important consideration here. It is my opinion that committing you into the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, specifically to the Heartland Behavioral Health Care Center, is the appropriate placement here. That will do really all that's expected, and that is to provide you that medical and mental health component that is needed, as well as to provide security to the community. It is a secured hospital from which individuals cannot just come and go as they please. It is a facility for which you will be confined there. I am going to make that order then from the court that is the least restrictive, proper placement for you going forward. A couple of things to keep in mind. One, the Heartland Behavioral Health Care Center is a facility that treats different types of individuals, different situations come up. Bottom line is they have a waiting list to go into that facility. I'm uncertain as to how quickly you will be able to be moved into that facility. I am going to order that you're held in the jail until that bed is available, but we will contact them today to make sure that that is expedited. Second thing is, Ruth, this will not be the last time that that you're here. There are review hearings that I know was suggested by others because it makes sense to have review hearings. They're designated by statute in Ohio, and there will be a review hearing in approximately 6 months, and after that every 2 years. Going forward, as to what will happen at those review hearings, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know until we have any type of feedback from those at the hospital. Fred, from the state of Ohio's standpoint, anything further?
Judge, we had talked to the victims, a victim representative of the family and the children, and they just simply wanted Ms. Miller to know that her children are doing well.
Okay.
Thank
you. Ian, anything further?
No, thank you.
All right. Then, Ms. Miller, I'm going to have you remanded back to the jail, but I certainly recognize the state of the where we find ourselves right now in this case, and I assure you that I will be contacting them to see that they will expedite your placement there as soon as possible. If nothing further, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Judge.
Good morning.
Could you state your name for the record and spell your last name?
My name is Daniel D. Horinko, spelled H-R-I-N-K-O.
And Dr. Horinko, where do you work and what do you do?
For the purposes of this evaluation, I am a forensic psychologist in independent practice, contracted with the Forensic Diagnostic Center for District 9 in Cambridge, Ohio, conducting evaluations for numerous counties in eastern and southeastern Ohio through the Department of Mental Health.
Now, what specific educational background do you have that allows you to hold that position?
I have a doctorate in clinical, and I have a doctorate of professional psychology focusing on general clinical with the subspecialty of forensic work, awarded in 1995. I've been licensed as a psychologist in Ohio since 1995, and I have been conducting forensic evaluations for 31 years, with the last 20 years being exclusively a forensic practice throughout the state of Ohio. I maintain ongoing continuing education units of at least 9 hours every year to remain affiliated with a certified forensic center in the state of Ohio.
This time I'd ask that Dr. Horinko be qualified as an expert in forensic psychology.
No objection.
Okay, so noted.
Dr. Horinko, you know we're here on the case of Ruth Miller.
That's correct.
And you've had 2 occasions to interview her.
That is correct. I met with her in late 2025 regarding, in response to orders from this court regarding an opinion pertaining to competence to stand trial, and if my initial impression was that she was likely to be competent, to then evaluate her regarding her mental status at the time of the offense. I produced 2 reports separately to the court addressing those 2 issues.
And you know that based on your reports and the reports of others, that Ms. Miller was found not guilty by reason of insanity last Tuesday by this court.
I was made aware of that when I was contacted by the Forensic Center indicating that the court had made this finding and assigned me to conduct this follow-up evaluation regarding the requirements set forth in 2945.40.
And your interview for that follow-up evaluation was on March 10th?
That's correct. I conducted that interview by way of video conferencing, and it was relatively short because I had previous history with Ms. Miller of getting history background, which was all conducted in person in late 2025.
Now, having conducted several, I'm sure, forensic evaluations, including commitment evaluations, what are the factors that you were looking for statutorily to determine what your opinion would be about Ruth Miller's placement?
Well, for purposes of this evaluation, I'm focusing on the first question is there a mental illness that has a substantial probability of impacting her ability to function in society? And if my opinion is that there is a mental illness, the next is to determine what the least restrictive setting would be to provide appropriate treatment for that mental illness, while also taking into consideration the safety of the community, which is somewhat different than the civil commitment statutes that prioritize individual functioning over the safety of the community.
And to make this determination, you based this upon your own 2 evaluations, and did you look at any other materials?
I was provided with copies of 2 evaluations conducted by other experts regarding her mental status at the time of the offense that were submitted to the court as part of the findings of not guilty by reason of insanity. Having access to that, it also provided me with reports from other records that I may not have been aware of, as well as the opinions of other knowledgeable experts regarding her current functioning, her functioning at the time, and whether or not she had a mental illness.
And those two reports that you reviewed would be the report of Dr. Susan Hatters-Freeman. And was that a report from February 17th of 2026?
That was one of the reports that I reviewed.
And the other expert report you reviewed would be a report by Dr. Christopher Merritt, issued January 28, 2026?
That is the other report I reviewed.
Based upon your review of those reports, the other materials that you mentioned that I believe are listed in your report from March 10th, and your evaluations, your individual impressions, did you determine whether Ruth Miller suffered from a mental illness?
There are clear indications that in recent months she has been experiencing debilitating symptoms often associated with mental illnesses. I typically do not go into the specifics of what a formal diagnosis may be, since a person's functioning is more the result of the impact of symptoms. In her case, she was specifically exhibiting delusional beliefs and following directions. There are also reports that suggest there were episodes of hallucinatory experiences, and that these debilitating symptoms of severe mental illness, clearly rooted in what could be considered a diagnosable mental illness for treatment purposes, severely impacted her ability to understand the nature of her actions. So the overwhelming evidence from the records as well as my observations is she does have a mental illness.
After making that determination, what factors did you consider in determining what would be a place for placement, the place of placement that is the least restrictive alternative available, consistent with public safety?
What I look for is the likelihood that this person is going to be able to be an active participant in managing their own mental illness. First and foremost is, are there indicators that medications, when appropriately prescribed, are helpful? I also look for indications of whether or not she is aware of the nature and extent of her mental illness. If she is aware and has insight regarding the nature of her actions when her mental illness is uncontrolled, the insight necessary to understand that she needs to be an active participant in managing her mental illness, and then looking at the supports that she needs from her surrounding environment to be able to maintain stability in that setting.
When you interviewed Ms. Miller on March 10th, was she medicated, and how was she doing?
She reported being medicated, and she appeared to be functioning well, and the medical records from the jail corroborated the fact that she appears to be functioning well within the jail environment with no behavior problems and no overt symptoms of mental illness that would be disruptive to her functioning in that environment.
With respect to insight into her mental illness, what did you discover?
I had concerns because her insight was very limited. Although she provided some basic factual evidence of understanding that she has a mental illness, she was unable to show an indication of being aware of what symptoms were associated with her mental illness, the impact these symptoms might have on her thinking and functioning. She was aware of the fact that she was taking medications, but had difficulty differentiating what the medications were for, and most importantly, she had difficulty providing a clear, logical, and rational explanation as to what the risks might be should she stop taking medications. So I would say her insight is very limited, and that she is responding to the external structure of the environment rather than being driven by an internal awareness or understanding about her mental illness that would allow her to be an active participant in corroborating with her treatment regime other than merely following directions.
When you talk about being an active participant in the treatment regime, would that include family support and a structure around her?
An active participant in their treatment regime is able to understand, in an abstract sense, the reason she's taking medications, the consequences of not taking medications, to be able to articulate the benefits of supportive environments and the services available, and see how all of that is leading towards the development of awareness, insight, and an independent ability to take responsibility for managing their mental illness with the supports. The environment provides the external structure, and at this time, her environment is very limited. It's safe, it's controlled, but there are no group therapies or individual therapies to help her develop these missing insights.
Thank you. Based on your evaluation of Ms. Miller, your review of the records, did you come to an opinion based on your training, education, and experience regarding the appropriate placement?
I did.
And what was that?
I am quite familiar with the state hospital system in Ohio, including Heartland Behavioral Health Care, and it's my understanding that they have extensive experience in providing evidence-based services to individuals, much as she is currently experiencing. They have individual therapy, they have group therapies, and they spend a lot of time helping individuals develop the necessary information, understanding, and insight into the nature of their mental illness, how it manifests itself, the importance of medications. They also work cooperatively with service providers in the community to help prepare for an eventual re-entry into the community, such as working with family members and community programs to prepare for that eventual supportive return.
Given the nature of the offense, did you have an opinion whether that should be a locked facility?
It should, because I would be concerned that with her limited insight, time away from a secure setting might put her in a position to make regrettable decisions about medications based upon her limited insight, which would then set the stage for a return of symptoms and the unpredictable, if not dangerous, behaviors associated with uncontrolled symptoms of mental illness.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Judge.
Thank you. Attorney Friedman.
Thank you, Judge Nurse. Judge Nurse, I do have a question. I'm wondering if it would be okay to speak from the table. And the reason I ask is, if I'm at the podium, I'm going to be right in front of the prosecutor, and he will not be able to see Dr. Rinko.
You're more than welcome to question him from right there.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Rinko, good morning. My name is Ian Friedman, and I represent Ms. Ruth Miller. If at any time I ask you any questions that are not clear, just please don't answer. Ask me to repeat, okay?
I will do that.
All right, thank you. So, your determination when considering the best interest of Ruth and the community at large is to have Ruth Miller placed at Heartland Behavioral Health Care in Massillon, correct?
That is the facility that I believe is responsible for servicing individuals in her county who have this particular legal status.
Very good. And I'm going to just kind of go through a number of questions quickly that may just be an affirmation of what you just said, okay? All right. So, placing Ms. Miller at Heartland, I'll call it, you believe would benefit, she would benefit from further assessment there?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. And you believe that she would benefit at Heartland by making further adjustments in her treatment and also to her medications?
That is correct.
All right. And you would agree, just in general concept, that compliance with medication, compliance with the treatment regimen, and growth and understanding from that is aimed at eventually at reintegration into the community. Fair?
I believe that would be in her best interest, is to provide that path towards that eventual possibility.
Now, would you agree with me that prior to the tragic incident in this case, Ruth did try to get treatment on her own, trying to figure it out kind of on her own without great assistance?
It's my understanding that there was a meeting of friends and family where concerns were expressed and that she had agreed to seek services. And I also believe that there was some medications in the form of antidepressants from a family physician, not a psychiatric or mental health provider.
Okay. Did you look or study kind of that area of what medication she received, the efficacy of it, and how it may have impacted the incident in this case?
I'm a psychologist, not a physician or a pharmacologist, so I'm not really qualified in an expert sense to be able to evaluate the effects of medications, other than the fact that I reported what she was prescribed and I reported what she was taking and what she did. Whether or not there is a connection between that requires expertise beyond my training and license.
Very good, thank you. And I think that you had stated during the direct examination, and you would continue to agree with me, that Ms. Miller has been fully compliant with all direction in all of the facilities that she's been in, whether it's been Marymount Hospital, the initial hospital here, or the Tuscarawas County Jail.
The records indicate that she has been fully compliant and never exhibited any oppositional or problematic behaviors.
Right. Now, when Ms. Miller was originally brought into the hospital on the date of this incident, would you agree that she was in a psychotic state based upon the records you've reviewed?
There were clear indications that she was exhibiting symptoms consistent with psychosis, such as delusional beliefs primarily, as well as possible hallucinatory experiences.
Right. And you've met with her and you've reviewed certain records in this case. Would it be fair, and I understand that your expertise is not with medications, but you've dealt with medicated people before, correct? You have a familiarity with it.
I do.
All right. And you would agree that her condition as of this date, where you and I are speaking now, her mental state has improved from where it was on the date that she made original entry into the system?
Well, I'm not aware about her functioning today, but when I saw her on the 10th, it was significantly improved from what was described in hospital records, and I would attribute that to a large extent to the fact that appropriate professionals have provided medications.
Very good, thank you. Now, you had talked about lack of awareness that Ruth may have. Do you know whether or not services have been provided, or more specifically, has anyone in the jail engaged in any discussion with Ruth Miller as to the medication she's on, what they are, their effects, and so forth, to give her that better insight that you were addressing during direct examination?
I saw no evidence in the records of any specific counseling focusing on that beyond what would be expected from the medical professional administering and providing the medications. There's no evidence of groups or other specified or targeted interactions to help with this.
And in your experience, you would expect that she would get that sort of attention at Heartland, fair?
I believe that is an essential part of their core program.
Question for you, Doctor. As it relates to cases involving not guilty by reason of insanity, if you could estimate for me, how many cases have you dealt with NGRI findings in murder cases, or serious felonies for that matter?
Probably somewhere between 100 and 150 in my career.
Okay. And would you consider, prior to the incident in this case, so this is the incident that brings us to the court, would you have considered Ruth to be untreated at that time?
There were no indications that she was receiving significant services because I believe she had taken the antidepressants for a period of time, but had stopped taking them several months prior to the instant offense. So I would consider untreated at the time of the instant offense.
And we talked about no incidents with Ruth Miller, but to date, would you agree that all indications point to Ruth being receptive to her medical and mental health care while in the Tuscarawas County Jail up until the point that you met with her?
I saw no evidence of her being resistive or questioning that.
Now, you did state during your direct examination that you did not make an official diagnosis, that's correct?
That is correct.
Would you agree that there was kind of a variety in diagnoses that were made between the mental health professionals, ranging from bipolar to schizophrenia?
Those are diagnoses of which I was aware, and I reported several of them in my report, because this cluster of symptoms falls under several diagnoses that are similar in many ways, yet different than others.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, your conclusion on page 8 of your report, so the final page, includes reference to a lengthy process, quote, lengthy process. My question to you is, until someone is in treatment and we are able to determine how they've taken to it, how they've received it, how well they have responded to it, one cannot really know how long the person should be in that level of treatment. Fair?
That is true, and that is why there is a process in place for the treatment staff, such as exists at Heartland, to continually update, reassess, and to provide feedback to the courts on a person's progress, so that when they and their experts make a determination that maximum benefits may have been reached, then the court can then reconsider the question regarding placement.
Very good. And so I guess just your choice of words as to lengthy was just more so, obviously we're not saying a day or two, we're talking about the time necessary to ensure that Ruth is safe to herself and others. Fair? And whatever that time may be.
Yeah, the intention of using that word was to indicate that this is not something that will be done in several days, several weeks, or not even likely in several months. My past experiences with doing evaluations with people transitioning out of hospitals indicate that the necessary steps will likely take, a minimum of a year, if not many, many more, depending upon her situation, her progress, and all the variables that the hospital can speak to.
Very good. Doctor, thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend.
Fred, any redirect?
No redirect.
Okay. And Doctor, I don't have any questions for you either. Your testimony is complete at this time. Again, if you wish to remain a part of the hearing, that is your decision, but your testimony is complete at this time.
Thank you much.
Oh, and Doctor, I wanted to also let you, if you're still there, I wanted to let you know that your ability to turn around the report in such a rapid time period is greatly appreciated. I know you're busy, but with the short time frame that we're given, we needed it and you provided it, so thank you.
The chilling moment, 40-year-old Ruth Miller told officers that she threw her 4-year-old son into a lake, saying she, quote, gave him to God.
Miller is back in court this hour for a bond hearing after pleading not guilty by reason of insanity for allegedly drowning her son in a local lake last month.
Rescue teams would also later discover the body of her husband in the lake, who Miller said was swallowed by a fish after not returning from a walk earlier that day.
Ma'am, can you explain to me what happened? Who did you throw in the water?
I gave my son to God.
Your son?
Yes.
Where's your husband?
He went for a walk this morning.
And you haven't seen him since?
He didn't ever come back. And we went to the boat and his clothes were there. And God told me he's in the lake and a fish swallowed him. And you're actually supposed to go look for him in the bottom of the lake. And you will find the fish. And you will find my husband.
I need to know where your husband's at.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
He's in a fish.
Yes.
There's no fish large enough on an Atwood to swallow your husband.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
Miller has also been charged for allegedly trying to harm her 3 other children during an incident. Let's get you into court now for the start of that hearing.
You may be seated. Thank you. We are now recording in the case entitled The State of Ohio versus Ruth A. Miller. The case number is 2025 CR 090285. The basis for which we are here today, just taking a step back, we previously had an arraignment in this matter, and at the time of the arraignment, which was back on September the 8th of 2025, at that time, at the time in which we were going to discuss bail, the state of Ohio had made a request that Ms. Miller be held without bail, as is provided for in Ohio under Revised Code Section 2937.222, which time the court planned to have Ms. Miller held and schedule a hearing within 3 days. After there was some consultation with counsel, actually September 29th was the date that was arrived at, which brings us here today. Ruth Miller is in the courtroom. She is seated at counsel table. She is there with her attorneys in this matter, Ian Friedman and Madeline Grant. The state of Ohio is represented by our county prosecutor, Ryan Steyer. At this hearing today, Ms. Miller, what's going to happen is, after that request is made by the state, the burden is going to be on the state to try and convince me by what is considered, or what's called, clear and convincing evidence of the following. There essentially are 3 areas that they will be touching upon. One of them is, the question is whether the proof is evident or the presumption great that the accused committed the offense with which the accused is charged. 2, whether the accused poses a substantial risk of serious physical harm to any person or to the community, and whether no release conditions will reasonably assure the safety of that person and the community. At this hearing, and your attorneys are aware of this, they know that they have the opportunity to present evidence as well. Notice go second, that's all. So shortly I'll have the state begin. My statement, I guess my comments are to the room in general. It's obviously a case that has gathered some attention. It's a case in which, based upon my prior experience, tensions can run high when there are allegations involving a death, particularly when it's a death of a child. For everyone, if there are any outbursts, if there's any disruptions, you'll be asked to leave. This is my warning to you. My advice to you is to let the attorneys do their jobs. But if there are any outbursts, the security knows they'll be asked to leave. There will be no recording, video or audio of these proceedings unless you're with the media. They followed the format of getting permission from me beforehand to do this. If you are not with the media, you cannot record
these proceedings. With that, Brian, I'll begin with, do you have any form of an opening statement that you wish to make? Again, you don't have to, I'm just simply offering.
Only, Your Honor, that I think after we present our evidence today, you'll see that this is not a whodunit or what did she do. That the proof will certainly be evident and the presumption great that Ruth Miller admitted to and committed the crime of aggravated murder with regard to her 4-year-old son. That she was a risk that day to herself and others, including her surviving children. And so, again, this will not be a whodunit or what did she do. This will be a case about whether there are any release conditions that can reasonably assure this court of the safety of the community, and particularly not only her children, but herself. And I would suggest that at the culmination of the evidence, there will be no evidence that can provide any reasonable assurance. This isn't a case where an ankle monitor is going to give that court assurance, or that there's any other secured facility other than where she's being held now at this point that can give the court that kind of assurance. And so that's why, Your Honor, we've moved the court as such. We are asking that Ms. Miller be held without bail, and that we would renew our request that no contact orders be imposed with regard to her surviving children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, thank you for hearing our statement, and I appreciate the state's position. I respectfully disagree when we look to the wording of the statute. And I'd like to really break this down as to how we are viewing the statute, revised code section 2937.222. Your Honor just stated the factors that you must consider when making a determination today. And I point to subsection 1, the proof is evident or the presumption great that the accused committed the offense with which the accused is charged. And I think it's easy to just gloss over that, and as our colleague stated a moment ago, just accept that this is not a whodunit case. But to a degree, that I think is just the start of the query. The second part of the query has to be really focused in on the word committed in this case, because I would submit, Your Honor, that if you just look at the common law definition of committed, that by Merriam-Webster, I went right to the basics as to what commit is. It's to carry into action deliberately. There has to be that sort of mental state that goes with the commission of any sort of act. And as we all know, going all the way back to our years of initial formal training as lawyers, we were taught to look at the mens rea and the actus reus. And in this case, I would agree with the prosecutor that the actus reus, the act, in fact, was carried out. We're not here today to dispute who that was. So that's something that I think can be taken by note. The mens rea, however, and that the intention or not.
Okay, we are going to take a break, but listening to defense counsel there make some arguments talking about mens rea. So we'll have to see what the judge decides in this case. I would assume he is not going to let her out, but we'll follow it, let you know. Meantime, that deliberations clock still up for the Jeffrey Spence case that's taking place 24 minutes right now. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Matt Johnson alongside Kelly Craft.
Back now to Ohio. We have been watching a bond hearing for a woman whose name is Ruth Miller.
Miller has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to charges that she drowned her 4-year-old little son in a lake last month.
Let's go back into the courtroom now. We are picking it up right where we left off.
the mens rea, however, and that the intention or knowledge of wrongdoing that constitutes part of the crime, I think is still in question. And without the mens rea, technically, if we look at the statute, subsection 1, one has to question whether or not the definition of committed can be met. The court accepted the plea of not guilty by reason of insanity pursuant to revised code section 2901.01A14 at the last appearance, calling into question whether or not Ms. Miller could appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct, and puts into question what her mental state was, whether or not she could form the appropriate mens rea in order to complete the commission of the offense. And so today is going to be spent, Your Honor, talking about what that mental state was at the time. It is our assertion, Your Honor, that that while the act is there, the mental state is not, and therefore the commission cannot be fully determined for purposes of subsection 1. As to the risk of serious physical harm to any person or the community, it needing to be a substantial risk of harm and not just simply based upon what the conduct was, but whether or not there is any pursuant to 3, any release conditions that could reasonably assure the safety of that person in the community. And I believe that the testimony today will have to be that after the incident on August 23rd, when Ms. Miller was taken into custody and then was confined to a mental health facility, which was a lockdown facility. It was monitored by professionals there with security staff, that there were no concerns for her safety or anyone else's safety. And so I would submit that at the end of the testimony here today, that there would be a combination of release conditions that could ensure Ms. Miller's safety, the safety of others, until this matter has been completed before Your Honor with final trial in this matter. So with that, I thank the court for the ability to provide opening statement. We are prepared to proceed. We have 4 witnesses, although I know 2 of them will be called by the state. I would just ask that the 2 witnesses not being called by the state, both Sheriff Orvis Campbell and Ranger Lucas Pace, be allowed to be examined subject as if on cross-examination for purposes of the dynamic between the witness and counsel, and also for purposes of expedition.
David, any concerns with those requests, Ryan?
Your Honor, I guess the way that this hearing is conducted is really at your discretion. The rules of evidence don't have direct application today. I think it's only fair that if you're going to call a witness, you call him as on direct, unless there's some element of surprise, which I don't think there is in this case.
All right. Ryan, because the rules of evidence don't apply here, I am going to allow them to be treated as if on cross-examination, if nothing else, just to expedite the proceedings. Okay. Before we move in, I did have one last question, and that is, I take your silence from both sides that there are no objections, but on the letter I had written any objection to proceeding today on that outstanding issue. Not from the state. Ian, I'd written a letter regarding the question of competency is outstanding in this matter. Any concern with proceeding with this bail hearing today in light of the fact that the evaluation has not been completed yet?
No, I think because this is based solely on the facts of the case that don't really implicate competency issues, so we're fine with it.
Just wanted to be sure. All right, then with that, the state of Ohio may call its first witness.
Okay, I'll call Ranger Rick Anderson.
Mr. Anderson, make your way up through here. It's a bit of a maze in here today. And you're gonna, there you go. Should I address you as Officer or Ranger Anderson? What do you prefer?
Ranger.
Okay. Then Ranger Anderson, if you'll have a seat. And please raise your right hand. Ranger Anderson, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please indicate by stating either I swear or I affirm.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and can you start by telling us your name?
My name is Richard Anderson.
Okay, and what is your occupation?
I'm a ranger with the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District.
Okay. And for how long have you been employed in that capacity?
23 years.
Okay. And for how long have you been a certified peace officer in Ohio?
23 years.
Okay. Were you working on August 23rd of this year?
I was.
Okay. And did you have occasion to respond to a call regarding a golf cart that had run into the lake?
I did.
Okay. Do you recall where you were when you received that call?
I was in a nearby cottage area.
Okay. And do you recall about what time that was?
Around, I want to say about 10:30. 10:30 a.m.
So if I were to tell you that the 911 call came in at 10:37 a.m., is that about what time that would have been?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what information did you have at that point in time before you were dispatched, or as you were dispatched?
I believe I was advised that by Central Dispatch out of Tuscaloosa County that a report of a golf cart accident.
Let's go ahead and bring in trial attorney Marlo Greer as this hearing gets underway. Okay, Marlo, so defense counsel is saying that's what he wants to show here, that there are some reasonable accommodations for his client here in order to ensure the safety of her and the community. I don't know, we'll have to see what comes out of this hearing, but I would be doubtful the judge would go along with that idea to release her, but I don't know. What do you think?
I know that we're supposed to be serious here, and I just want to say that it's a very, very serious case, but sometimes lawyers, the only way to have us be able to help through some of these things. Can we just talk about the fact that it's Ranger Rick for just a second? Okay, no, I understand that. Defense has some good points. I think if it were me, I would absolutely stipulate to the fact that she has no contact with her family. I don't know if that's where he's going. He may be going there because he said there were some conditions that would ensure the safety of the community, primarily her other children, and I believe that that would be the no contact. However, she's currently in a lockdown mental health facility, and I think they're going to have a hard time at convincing the judge that that is not where she is supposed to be.
Just talk to me in general with this case, you know, the challenges that the defense may face by putting forward a not guilty by reason of insanity or mental disease or defect. How is that different?
It's different because you need to prove that she really did not understand what she's doing. I think we're going to see a snippet of that as far as this bond hearing, that she really was not able to comprehend what she is doing. And so what she needs is mental health treatment as opposed to a guilty verdict. It also puts your client into a space where, let's say that, and it would not be true in this case, but let's say that there was a possibility of parole. And if she is committed to a mental health institution, in the mental health institution, it continues to say that, no, she still is not able to understand, then she would in fact stay there for life. So it is a risky defense on several different levels. But in this case, it does seem like it is the only viable defense that they do have.
Pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity 3 weeks ago. She's facing multiple charges, including murder stemming from the alleged drowning in that lake near her house.
You haven't missed a moment, so let's go back into the courtroom right where we left off.
An accident with a possible injury at the Avenue West Marina.
Okay. Did you directly respond to that area?
I did.
Okay. And what did you find when you got there?
I entered the parking area of the marina. At that point, I was unable to locate the accident. In a short time, I was directed towards the lake from the parking area. As I approached the lake, I observed another officer talking to Mrs. Miller and her 3 children who were sitting on the bench near the lake.
Okay. And who was that other officer?
Officer Lucas Pace.
Okay. You said you were approached by him?
No, I approached them.
You approached them?
I approached them.
Okay. And what did you observe when you got there?
He was talking to them. Mrs. Miller and her 3 children were sitting on a bench near the lake, and they were wet. Their clothes were wet.
Okay. And did you hear them saying anything?
There was a conversation about occupants on the golf cart. Initially, she began to talk about having a husband and a son, a child in the water. And we had to clarify at that point, were they on the golf cart? And eventually she clarified that they were not on the golf cart, but they were in the lake. So at that point I contacted the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Department via telephone, and I advised them what I had and that I needed assistance. Because at that point we believed that they were in the lake someplace. We just didn't know where.
And the lady who was sitting on that bench with her, did you say 3 children?
Yes.
Is she in the courtroom today?
She is.
Okay. Is she the lady sitting here beside Mr. Friedman to the left?
She is.
Okay. What happened next?
As I said, I was talking to the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Department on the telephone, and I walked a little bit away from where Officer Pace was speaking with Mrs. Miller, and there was other people around her. I needed a little space so I could hear, and I could talk to them. When the conversation ended with the Sheriff's Department, at that point, Mrs. Miller and her children had gotten up from the bench and that they were sitting on, and they began to walk from near the shoreline where they were on the bench towards the buildings at the West Marina, up over a grass area. I was told by Officer Pace that they were going to take us to where the husband and child were. They walked for a short period of time. He told me that he would go get his cruiser because he was going to pick them up in the car and take them to that area, wherever that area was, because we didn't know at that point. So I followed him. Eventually we got beyond the buildings up to the parking lot. On our side of the parking lot, there's a trail system that goes through the park.
So you followed them, you're on foot?
I'm on foot. I'm on foot, and I'm following them, and they're walking along together. And at that point, somewhere in there,
Now, are they just casually walking together?
They're holding hands, and they're walking, and they're talking, perhaps praying, maybe singing. They're a little bit from me, and I can't really tell exactly what they're doing, but they're together.
And your information from Ranger Pace was that they were going to show where you might be looking for these bodies?
Yes. So once
where was Ranger Pace?
He was retrieving his vehicle. The idea was that he would get his cruiser, and we'd put him in the cruiser, and that they would go to that location. So I'm following him on foot. I said, they're a little bit ahead of me. They get to a certain point around the parking lot, and they disperse, and they take off running, including Mrs. Miller, onto a trail. This happened, this was a very short period of time, and Mrs. Miller went down to her hands and knees. And at that point, I believed I would be able to get to her and get a hold of her so that we didn't do this. She sprang up to her hand, up from her hands and knees.
No, I'm sorry, is this already after she took off running?
Yes, she took off running, and then it didn't last long. And she went down to her hands and knees. Then she sprang back up to her feet and took off running hard. At that point, she came to a couple on bikes. It was an Amish couple on bikes. She said something to the woman. The woman gave her the bike. She took off on the bike. At that point, I contacted Officer Pace, and I advised him what had happened, and that he could pick me up. He picked me up,
Now, when she took off on the bike, did she take off in a direction opposite you?
The direction in which we were both going when this happened, she continued in that direction. Once Officer Pace picked me up, I got into the vehicle, we drove into the park, because we went outside the park, we drove into the park. We didn't see her. We located the children in a camp area called B, which is inside. We got the children into the car. They told us that they would take us, lead us to where the boat was docked. So we went there. When we arrived there, we found the bike that Mrs. Miller had been riding, and we looked at the boat over, we looked the dock area over. We couldn't find Mrs. Miller, so we got back into the vehicle and we drove back through the park. We got to an area where the trail system picked back up. I told Officer Pace I would get out and walk that area. I found Mrs. Miller face down in very high grass. The grass is approximately chest high along a trail. At that point, I advised her to get up. She was reluctant to get up. I looked towards the trail and I saw the tops of 2 male heads that were on the trail, and I asked them to come over to help me. Well, they came over, and when she saw them, she got up. From that point, we walked back to the activity center, which is the park office.
Okay. I want to come back to a lot of that, but I want to play now for you. You indicated that you had called the sheriff's office. Do you remember a Deputy Caden Edwards being the initial responder from the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we can have Detective Fisher authenticate this a little better later, but this involves body-worn camera of him where you were involved. And so I want to get to that point here.
Our thanks to our guest for this hour, Marlo Greer. Coming up, don't go anywhere. That body camera footage you've been hearing about Ruth Miller, is played in open court.
Ruth Miller. She is the Amish mother who told officers that she threw her 4-year-old son into a lake, saying she, quote, gave him to God. She has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity for allegedly drowning her son in a local lake. This was last month. Rescue teams would also later discover the body of Miller's husband in the lake, whom she said was swallowed by a fish after not returning from a walk earlier that day. The defendant has also been charged for allegedly trying to harm her 3 other children during the incident. Let's get you back inside that courtroom now. The court is about to watch some body camera video of Ranger Rick Anderson responding to the scene.
There's another one of them right here?
Now that is Deputy Edwards' body cam footage. Is that you walking on the dock?
It is.
Okay. So at what point is that in terms of what you already explained to us?
That would be as you saw there earlier, if you can pull that back, you'll see a bike sitting there. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the bike that she retrieved from a couple on the trail. When we arrived there, being that we saw the bike, we had hoped to find her there. We did not.
Okay. Now, do you know, is this the dock that is later known to be the dock where the Millers kept their pontoon?
It is.
Okay. Okay. And so you responded there with Ranger Pace?
I did.
In his vehicle?
I did.
Okay. And that's when Deputy Edwards approached you?
Yes.
All right, so can you catch me up on what's going on? We're at my dispatch. We're so confused.
Mom evidently drove the golf cart into the lake down at the marina.
Okay.
Sidewalk down by where the rental dock is. Just said, "Come here," as I've been there blue things.
Yeah, so when I first got here, a bystander was saying that he saw him praying with the kids, saying that got like it was time for her husband to go and stuff like that. It seems like she's got some.
She said her husband, her youngest son, drowned this morning. So we need to locate her husband and son.
Yeah.
So now the bike that she was on is this bike, and I don't know if you're here or not. But the golf cart's marina, the husband, we don't know where he's at. The 4-year-old is alleged to have drowned this morning.
And the dad.
Oh, your word. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So who is that that's with you at this point, about 10 minutes in?
That's one of the children.
Okay. One of the two 18-year-old boys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know where the other two were at the time?
In the patrol vehicle.
Okay. And tell us how you found them.
They were going through the campground. They were riding through the campground in the area B camp area of Atwood Park.
Okay. Was that shortly before you arrived at the dock here?
It was.
Okay. And you arrive at the dock, you find the bike that she had commandeered, as you explained, and the second 18-year-old boy.
Yes.
I'm being custody and charity right now. You understand that? How old are you? Are you 18? Yeah. Well, I really like to see custody. That's what I'm charity right now. So I'm being custody right now, okay? You understand that?
That's outside here. It's not in here.
Would your dad and little brother be out at Area 3? Where's your dad and little brother? In the water? Why do you think they're in the water?
That's where they are.
Well, we need to find your mom. Where do you think she might be?
Probably over by the trail somewhere. I'm not sure.
Over by Area 3? You know where Area 3 is?
I do not. I'm not for you guys.
On the outside areas? Yeah, we'll go back out there and check.
Okay. 7940 something.
Okay. Now, I know that's from Officer Edwards' body cam footage, but does that seem accurate as you remember it that day?
It does.
Okay. Can you estimate for how long it had been between when Ruth took off running and you lost her until this moment?
Only an estimate. I would say 30 minutes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to pull up a second clip from Officer Edwards' body cam footage. We'll start this one about a minute in. Now that last clip began at about 11:18 a.m. on the clock of the body cam. The 911 call came in about 10:37 a.m. And at this point on the body cam, the clock is at 11:38 a.m. Do you remember, and is that you depicted there with Ruth Miller and then two other gentlemen?
It is.
Okay. And so do you recognize that scene then?
I do.
Okay. Now, how much time had passed before you found Ruth lying face down in high grass until this event right here?
Once I located her, she got up when the two men beside her came into the grass. She saw them and she got up.
Did she initially respond to your request to get up?
She did not.
Okay.
She did not. When I first located her, she was laying on her stomach with her arms underneath her in the high grass. I told her, I said, get up, Ruth, we need to go. And she did not want to. And when I saw the tops of two male heads on the trail, I asked for help from them. And they came over when she saw them. She stood up and we walked directly to where you see us.
And can that high grass be visualized in this still shot here at 1 minute, 13 seconds into this clip?
It can.
Where is that?
It's just above your cursor there, right in there.
All right. Off to the center right of the photograph.
Yeah, there's a trail system that goes through from the outside areas through there into the park.
Okay. Now, so with the assistance of these two individuals, do you know if these two individuals knew Ruth?
I have no idea.
Okay. And with their assistance, she did get up?
She responded, yes, she got it.
Okay. Was she saying anything to you or otherwise?
She talked about, she advised me that she didn't believe that I was one with God during the walk from the trail back over to where we're at right now. She had issues. She talked about fidelity issues. You know, how I'll phrase that though. She advised me that you know, the importance of fidelity, and like I said, she said that I wasn't one with God.
Okay. Did she make any remarks between when you found her and this moment in terms of her lost husband or son?
She did not.
Okay. Now, were you there as she was eventually taken to the squad or the ambulance that was on scene?
Yes.
Okay. And that ambulance was initially called out right after the golf cart went into the water, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us a little bit about how you and others were able to get her into the ambulance and then to the hospital.
Well, if you play this forward, she'll go over there and she'll sit down on the ground near that tree, and she was there for a short period of time for children, and it was decided that she needed to get into the squad, and as during the time when I came upon her on the trail in the weeds, she wasn't really interested in getting up and going. So we had to pick her up and put her on the gurney because she wouldn't get on herself.
And as I understand it, the investigation was shortly after this handed over to the sheriff's office. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And other than your initial response, and then I guess Ruth and the kids running from you and you finding them and getting her into the squad, did you have any other involvement in this matter?
No.
Okay. Now, you weren't wearing body cam at the time, were you?
No.
Okay. Did you have body cam at the time?
I did not. I had one. It was taken out of service, and I hadn't received the new one.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, the direct examination of Ranger Rick is completed. Let's bring in trial attorney Marlo Greer. Marlo, all right, thanks for sticking around and continuing to watch this with us. You know, I noticed that Ruth, during this hearing so far, she's been quite emotional. They've been playing that body camera footage, so the direct examination of the Ranger has just finished up. How would you approach cross? We've heard him say, I mean, this is not a case of who done it.
The cross, I actually don't know that the cross of Ranger Rick is going to be anything related to who done it. I do believe that it's going to re-emphasize that she was talking about giving her child to God and that the end is near, as well as she was indicating that he was not one with God and therefore did not understand what was going on. I believe that that is likely going to be the focus of their insanity defense, and that she did not understand the severity of her actions. In her mind at that time, this was not a murder, but yet it was something that it was very important to her, where in a way she was saving her son from what some were concerned in September was going to be the end of times. So I do believe that they will talk about that, because it really does show what her mental state was at that moment.
Marlo, thank you. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. Coming up, the defense cross-examination. The ranger is going to be questioned about Miller's mental state the day he responded to that scene.
My name's Ian Friedman, and I represent Mrs. Miller. I've got just a few questions. I don't anticipate it'll take that long. You've described the scope of your investigation. It was limited once Miss Miller was in the back of the squad car.
She's put into an ambulance.
Into an ambulance, I apologize. Okay. And so after this matter was turned over to the Tuscarawas County Sheriffs and other law enforcement, you didn't have any other investigatory roles in this? Okay. Thank you. I want to focus with you during this questioning on Mrs. Miller's mental state during your interactions with her, okay? And my question is, what sort of training and experience do you have with individuals suffering from mental health diseases, mental health ailments?
Only what would be consistent with a police officer in the state of Ohio. I have no special training.
Okay. Have you been involved in a situation before where that rose to the level of what you observed in this case, specifically the mental state that Mrs. Miller was clearly suffering at the time of your interactions with her?
I've never had another incident like this. As far as her mental capacity, I don't have the training to be able to tell you what the capacity of what position other people were in over the years that we've interacted with. So I really can't answer that.
That's great. Thank you. One of the things that you learned during the course of your interaction that day, your presence that day, was that Mrs. Miller operated a golf cart, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that golf cart was utilized to, Mrs. Miller was driving it, went to pick up her daughter, went to pick up the sons. Do you recall that?
Well, that's roughly as I understood it, yes, as I understood it.
Okay. And did you come to understand that Mrs. Miller had actually crashed that golf cart?
As I understand it, yes.
Okay, and what did you understand about her operation and crashing of that golf cart?
I was advised that she was the driver of the golf cart. The golf cart had gone into the lake near the docks at the West Marina.
Okay. And did it crash into a wall?
No, sir. It went over the rocks and into the water.
Into the water. All right. Now, how long after you first encountered Mrs. Miller did she tell you what she believed happened, specifically that her son was in the lake?
Well, initially, as we got the call that it was a golf cart accident, and when I arrived there and I made it to the lake, she was there with her children, and at first my thought was that perhaps they were on the golf cart with her and her children. But within a few minutes, she stated no, that they weren't on the golf cart. That everybody who was on the golf cart that went into the water with her at that point was accounted for. So at that point, we knew that they were not on the golf cart, but she said they were in the lake.
Okay. And so right away, Mrs. Miller was letting you know that they, being her son and husband, were in the lake.
Yes.
Okay. And she did not deviate from that during your encounters with her that afternoon of the 23rd, correct?
No.
And she was adamant with you, and I think Ranger Lucas, is it Lucas?
Luke Pace.
I'm sorry?
Luke Pace.
Luke Pace, I'm sorry. With Ranger Pace, she was adamant that a large fish had eaten her husband, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did she ever deviate from that?
No.
Now, which ranger was it that called out for assistance by the Tuscarora Sheriff's Department?
That would be me.
That would be you. All right. And what was your basis for calling out to them?
The belief that there were people in the lake.
Okay. Now, did you notify anyone that there were issues of any mental health that may be present?
No, I advised dispatch what she was telling us to try to give them a better understanding of the situation. I did not say that I thought there was some type of issue like that. I just advised them what I was hearing, what I was seeing, and what, why I needed him.
Because your goal primarily, obviously at the time, was safety of the child and of the husband. Your mission was to find them.
Yes.
Right. But as you sit here today and you think back upon the situation, as I'm sure you've done many a times, in anticipation of your testimony, did you believe that at the time Mrs. Miller was suffering from some sort of mental health issue that afternoon?
I didn't know.
Okay. All right, now you talked about on direct that Mrs. Miller and the children began to walk away from you. And they were holding hands?
As I believe, yes, I recall, yes.
Okay. And they also were praying intently at some point, correct?
Praying, singing, talking, something. They were a distance from me. I couldn't tell exactly. There was some interaction. Something was going on.
And did the children run or just Mrs. Miller?
Everybody ran.
Everyone ran. And the question that I have for you as it relates to Mrs. Miller, why did she run away from you at that time?
I don't know.
All right, so there was no questioning of her as to why she ran once she was brought into custody?
No.
Okay. If I were to suggest to you that Mrs. Miller ran away to, in her mind, meet up with Marcus and Vincent in heaven, you would have no way to know if that was true or not?
No.
Okay. Did she run? Well, you had said you didn't know, so if I were to suggest to you she ran to pray or to go to heaven herself, you'd have no way of knowing one way or the other. Did you identify the two gentlemen that assisted you in taking Mrs. Miller from the shrubbery?
No.
Do you know if any of your colleagues did? So that as of today, do we know who those two individuals are?
Not that I know.
In your opinion, and again, you don't know exactly what was going on in her head, and I understand that. That would be an excessive expectation. Was Mrs. Miller acting rationally in your interactions with her?
To say that she was rational, I didn't know Mrs. Miller. I never met Mrs. Miller to the best of my knowledge before this. I meet a lot of people every year working for the Conservancy District. I'm not familiar with how Mrs. Miller normally behaves and the things Mrs. Miller normally says. So I really can't answer that.
That's fair. But some of the things, I'm not going to get into all of them here at today's hearing, but some of the things that were being discussed about the fish and being reunited with the husband and son, with God and so forth? Did that seem out of the ordinary or unusual or something that you could process logically?
Her level of religious devotion, what that means to her, what it means to me, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
She was talking about these things, and I just don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. And then, not knowing, would that also hold true if I were to say to you, do you know, or did you formulate an opinion as to whether or not she was sane at the time of the incident? Would the answer be the same? You don't know?
Yeah, I don't know.
And last question that I have for you, we had heard on the video a moment ago, the audio as well, Mrs. Miller saying, I gave my son to God. You heard that?
I did.
All right. Do you know if in Ruth's mind she believed that her son was still alive and with God and that she would be reunited with her son?
I don't know what she thought.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Ranger. I appreciate it.
Nothing further.
This was just hours after her husband drowned in the same lake while swimming. Police arrived and they say that she told them she gave the child to the Lord. Miller is pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. So why don't we get you back inside that courtroom? A new witness is on the stand. This is the lead detective in the case on direct examination by the prosecution.
On August 23rd of this year, we heard testimony that the Rangers were dispatched to a golf cart in the water. And you were here for all that testimony. When did you learn of this situation and how?
So August 23rd was a Saturday. I typically work Monday through Friday with the position that I currently hold at the sheriff's office. So it was a little bit before noon. I want to say 11:50, 11:51-ish. I actually received a call on my cell phone from the sheriff. And he had questioned, hey, do you know what's going on? Have you heard what's going on? Something to that effect. That's not an uncommon call for me to receive on the weekend. It's not uncommon for me to communicate with the sheriff on the weekend. And at that point, I did not know what he was speaking of. So he filled me in just a few of the details that we had a golf cart that had crashed into Atwood Lake, that there was a suggestion of at least 2 missing people. There was potentially some question about some mental health crisis that may have been occurring, and that he thought that some people needed some assistance.
Okay. Do you remember what was said that gave you some concern about this being a mental health crisis?
There was the communication about Ruth suggesting that she had thrown her 4-year-old son into the lake to give him to God. There was also the suggestion that Marcus was at the bottom of the lake in the belly of a fish.
And it's about the time you get the call that she's being transported or about to be transported to Union Hospital, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so when you get that call, what is your first, what's your next move?
So for purposes of probably too much detail, as soon as I get the call, I had to change clothes because it was a Saturday. I was doing work around the house. So by the time I changed clothes, just a matter of minutes, I had gotten into my patrol vehicle from the sheriff's office and immediately called the sheriff back to let him know that I was on my way, and determined that it was probably in the best interest of the case and for a matter of time's sake for me to respond directly to Union Hospital to meet Ruth there.
Okay. And what was your purpose of doing that?
Honestly, to attempt to gather some information. Do we in fact have 2 missing individuals? Are they in fact in the lake? Or is this a case of an individual who has experienced some type of mental health crisis and is not speaking of anything that is reality currently? And that would obviously, those details would determine our later response.
Okay. Did you respond directly to Union Hospital?
I did.
Tell us about that.
So when I arrived at Union Hospital, they're familiar with me, so and to see me on a Saturday was a little concerning to them, I believe. So I walked into the emergency room. I was immediately buzzed back to the treatment rooms there in the emergency room. And there are 2 specific rooms within Union Hospital in which individuals who have some type of mental health issue, mental health crisis, have been pink slipped. some type of incident that way. They're specifically housed in one of these two rooms. And that's because the rooms themselves can be locked and the contents of the rooms can be controlled so that there's no idea or there's no ability for somebody to grab some kind of equipment and use it then as a weapon. So I made my way towards those two rooms, presuming that that's where we were going to likely end up. Before I even got around the corner, I could hear a female voice singing very loudly. It appeared to be some kind of religious songs, hymns, something to that effect. So Ruth was definitely able to be heard long before I could see her. As soon as I rounded the corner, I did witness Ruth on the ambulance cot. And it was just a few moments then that she was transferred from that cot and placed onto the hospital bed in that room that I was first initially responding to.
Okay. And were you able to engage in a conversation with her?
I was. So upon meeting Ruth for the first time again, it was difficult to make a connection initially because of her loud singing and she was not really listening to anything else that was going on there. She also had the sheet of the bed covered across her face. And she refused after several requests to remove that sheet from her face, saying that we needed to contact her husband Marcus and that the two of them would share their story together.
Okay. Was she making statements about Marcus and his whereabouts?
She was. She continually would say that Marcus was at the bottom of the lake, that he had been swallowed by a fish, and that's where we would find him.
Okay. Before that, did she make a statement that Marcus would be at their home in Millersburg?
There was a suggestion. I don't recall if it was before that particular statement or after, but there was a statement made that Marcus would be at the home. Ruth also provided a cell phone number for Marcus, suggesting that we should call him and that he would answer, and that he would be able to tell us what had happened and respond to assist her.
Do you know, did anybody attempt to make that phone call to that phone number that she gave?
Yes, there were multiple attempts made. Both dispatch and I personally attempted to make a phone call to that phone number.
Okay.
It went unanswered and to voicemail.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and bring in trial attorney Marlo Greer. Marlo, all right, this is the next witness in this hearing. Before that, we had Ranger Rick that was on the stand, the cross-examination. Getting out from that Ranger that he really has never dealt with a situation like this before. When she was running, maybe she was running to God, running to get her husband, running to pray. What are you taking away from the hearing so far, Marlo?
I really liked the opening questions from the defense attorney as far as what is your experience with mental health issues like this? Have you ever been trained? And I believe Ranger Rick did say he did not have the experience. However, he did come across as, yes, I believe there was something going on here. In other words, what she was saying didn't really make sense from a logical perspective. I also believe having Detective Fisher on the stand now, no offense to Ranger Rick, but Detective Fisher is much more articulate and is presenting in a way that I think the judge will appreciate. It's very succinct. I'm interested to see if the cross-examination is the same. It seems to me that the prosecution is putting on these individuals asking questions about mental health really actually helps the defense here. If the defense argument is to be believed, that you look at the plain language of committed, which includes deliberately, the prosecution is putting on evidence that this may not have been deliberate and she may not have known what she was doing. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, I mean, this witness right here is talking about when he arrived on scene and he didn't know if she was being honest as to what was happening, or maybe she was having a melt breakdown. Who knows? We'll have to see what happens, Marlo.
At that point in time, had she mentioned that she was concerned that her husband was missing after having left that morning? Or was that later?
The conversation about being concerned about him missing, I believe, happened in a later conversation. I'm not sure that we had that exact conversation the first time.
But she specifically told you that she threw Vincent off the dock as what she thought was an inspiration from God.
Yes.
What she said.
Yes.
And that she watched him drown.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. What'd you do? What happened next?
During part of my conversation, when I was asking Ruth initially we were communicating about the number for Marcus, Ruth had started to give me a phone number, and then she stopped and she went back. And so I inquired as to what that phone number was, and it was actually a phone number for her father. So I excused myself from her room for a period of time, and I actually spoke with Ruth's father on the phone in an attempt again to gather any kind of information. Did they know the whereabouts of Marcus or Vincent? Have they seen him recently, or them recently? Could her father provide any kind of insight on it? Is this some type of mental crisis or mental snap that has occurred, or are these individuals in fact missing? And during that conversation, Ruth's father was shocked about the phone call, if I can say that, and did not have any idea where Marcus or Vincent may have been. They should have, according to him, been with Ruth, and they together at Atwood, and that was the last that he had known.
And then anything else before you left the hospital?
No, I was continuing to try to get as much information as possible, but at that point, I almost feel like the law enforcement and the medical world collided, and they were attempting to treat Ruth for whatever it was that they felt necessary, and they had given her some medications at that point, and she was not able to answer any more questions that I had.
Okay. So what'd you do when you left?
So when I left there, I responded from the hospital directly to Atwood, and I made contact with the units that were there on scene.
And was there some concern about where to look for these bodies?
There was. So there was some suggestion of what is labeled as the Causeway Dock, simply a name that Atwood has given the dock area where the Miller boat is docked and where this incident had taken place. Or there's another kayak area or a kayak dock closer to the Welcome Center. So as we were going through and talking to some witnesses, there was a witness who had observed Mrs. Miller and her children at the kayak dock, and they were described in what appeared that they were praying. And so that was an area of concern. There was definitely the Causeway dock where a lot of these incidents had been described to have taken place, so that was an area of concern as well.
When you arrived back out on scene, were there divers exploring the lake?
There were, yes. And initially they had focused their efforts around the Causeway dock or at the Causeway dock. If you look or can picture a dock in particular just kind of going straight out, and the boats are docked on both the left and right side. When I had gotten there, the divers were looking up.
And this, of course, direct examination is from the state. Keep in mind that she is claiming insanity at the time of the crime, so we'll see what the cross-examination looks like.
Divers were looking on both that left and right side. They had moved some boats, and they were looking under where those boats may be.
At some point, did you, I guess, want some clarification from Ruth as to where specifically she would have?
I did. So obviously the Causeway dock had been explored, the left and the right, under where those boats would be by the divers. We had then moved the divers to the position of the kayak area, or the kayak launch, and they had checked that area. And we were really kind of running out of ideas, so to speak, at this point. We weren't finding anything, which seems to be a good thing, but it's also, there's a lot of suggestion that he may be here. So we needed to make sure that we weren't in fact going to find Vincent and or Marcus. I had made a call at that point in time, so some hours had passed, and I had made a call back to Union Hospital and said or made the suggestion that I wanted to take Ruth from the hospital, that I wanted to take her with me. I wanted to transport her back to Atwood, and I wanted her to really give us some clarification, like where did these incidents happen, point to me where Vincent went in the water, those kind of things. And as you can imagine, the hospital was not readily agreeable to that, and there was some red tape to get through. So in the meantime, while we were exchanging some phone calls back and forth between me and the hospital, I was notified by one of the Cleveland Clinic police officers that Ruth had drawn a map of where exactly she had placed Vincent in the water.
Did you somehow get an image of that map?
I did. So almost immediately after it was drawn, I received a text message, a picture of the map. And then later, I received the actual physical copy of the map that Ruth had drawn.
Okay. And can you just describe what that map depicted?
Sure. So again, if I can take you back to that mental image of the dock, just going straight out, the boats on the left and right side. If we were to just go straight out at the end of the dock, there was a dot, a significant black dot, like it was scribbled in a circle. And that was the indication from Ruth as to where she had thrown Vincent in the water on that particular day.
Okay. I have a question. Are we talking about the Causeway dock or are we talking about the kayak?
Sorry, we were talking about the Causeway dock. And it was specified there also that it was the Causeway dock.
Tell us about the search efforts after that.
With that map in mind and the information that Ruth had drawn this and indicated specifically where she had thrown Vincent into the water, divers were requested to go back to the Causeway dock and focus their efforts on in front of, or at the end of that dock, which I later learned that they had not done prior to that request. And when they focused their efforts, it was a very short time when they then located the body of 41 Vincent Miller about 10 feet off of the end of that dock on the bottom of the lake.
Okay. Do you know approximately what time that would have been?
I want to say roughly around 6:30 p.m.
Okay. About 6:03, I think. Is that any reason to disagree with that?
Nope, it was 6:03 and 0. Stepping backwards.
All right. And then you later that evening went up to the hospital again to interview Ruth, is that right?
I did. So 6:03 p.m., you'd think August 23rd, it stays daylight longer than it does now. So we continued to have the divers search the area for Marcus. As long as we could, the nighttime hours fell, and we decided it was probably in the best interest of everybody to call off any remaining searches until the next morning. As you could probably imagine, there's still something in my gut, though. We still haven't located somebody else that was talked about at this time, so I felt the need to respond back to Union Hospital and speak with Ruth again to see if I could gather any more information from her regarding Marcus or his location. So after we had called off the search for the evening, I responded back to Union Hospital. Ruth was still in the same room that she had been in previously. She appeared to be much more coherent at this time. I introduced myself to her, requested if she would speak with me, and she agreed. because of the information that I have now, right? Before it was, do we really have somebody who's missing? Do we have a mental health crisis? Is there something going on? Versus now, we've located a body right where she said she threw him in the lake. I read through her Miranda rights, something that we read people and make sure that they understand what's happening, and she did agree to speak with me at that point, and she walked me right back through this incident again. So we talked about how the day had begun, how the night prior to that had happened. Ruth said that she and the family had arrived at Atwood on Friday. Afternoon, early evening, they had unloaded some stuff from their truck, and the family had gone on the pontoon boat. She said they had a great time. They were cruising around the upper end, something that she described, the upper end of the lake, and the kids were fishing. She said it got dark, but that she and Marcus didn't want to end the fishing trip early or the fun that the kids were having, so they actually didn't get back to the camper until about 10 p.m. that evening. She said Marcus went to bed, and the kids stayed up and they watched TV. At about midnight, somewhere around midnight, Ruth said that she and Marcus were awoken by God, that they began to pray and read the Bible, and the two made the decision that they were going to go back to the boat. She said she grabbed a blanket and a Bible, her Bible, and they walked out the door. Now there's the golf cart there that you've heard us talk about before, and she said they were going to drive the golf cart to the boat. However, the neighboring camper, the neighbor was right outside, Chad Engstrom, and she had asked him, I believe actually it was Marcus that had asked, one of them had asked him if Chad would take them to the dock. So there was some discussion as to where the location of the dock was, and then ultimately Chad takes them there. Ruth said that she and Marcus, once they get to the boat, realized that they had forgotten the keys to the boat. So they began to pray again and to experience these different tests of God or from God. They were asked to get into the water, and it's dark. Ruth says that she and Marcus were both nervous about getting in the water initially. But they got in the water. They were to float on their backs at one point, and Marcus began to sink during this, so he swam back to the dock. He was then supposed to be able to pull Ruth from the water onto the dock, and after 3 failed attempts, she had to swim to the back of the boat and climb out using the ladder there. She said that Marcus did not, or let's first say that he started to sink because of his lack of faith, and that he was not able to pull her out of the water because he did not ask God for any strength to do that. There was also a discussion that Marcus was to swim to the sandbar at Atwood Lake, and to give you any kind of direction exactly where a sandbar is, I can't do that. I'm not sure that there is one at Atwood.
All right, let's bring in criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer. Josh, so much I want to talk to you about, but let's start with this. This is the bond hearing, and the defense is claiming that this woman, Mrs. Ruth Miller, does not pose a risk to the community, specifically a substantial risk, and therefore she should be released. On the other hand, you have a woman who admitted, she's claiming the insanity defense, but admitted that she threw her 4-year-old into the lake to give her child to God. Your thoughts?
Well, the very discrete question you just presented, which is one of the many factors that the court includes when evaluating someone for bond, is her likelihood to commit additional crimes and threat to the community. And I would think that that's pretty low, considering I don't believe she has access to these children anymore, certainly none the age of 4. Her other children are late teenagers, going up to a couple of boys at the age of 18, who certainly would be able to protect themselves better from a mother who is acting under some sort of religious fervor or delusion or struggling under a mental health diagnosis. So I don't think that that's the reason to prevent bond as much as there are other considerations. Most specifically, I would be afraid of her own personal safety and well-being. When you have any kind of mental disturbance, that person, there's a lot of volatility involved. And while they can be absolutely fine, that changes quickly, and you can have some really awful results.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Josh, but that's exactly what I was going to say, is her risk of hurting herself, even if she's under these beliefs or insane at the time of the next crime, if she were to hurt herself, I think arguing that's a risk to the community. Just briefly, I know we need to take a break, but could that be considered by the court?
Absolutely. The court gets broad discretion, as you know, Judge, in setting the bond, because it's better to have a pound of prevention in so many of these cases, especially with mental health in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You had brought up early on when you were talking about your training, you brought up the word crisis in relation to mental health crisis. And what does that mean to you? What do you define as a mental health crisis?
You know, a mental health crisis can be any number of things. There obviously is going to be probably a very specific definition that you might be looking for, but it can be somebody who is overwhelmed in any moment, and their responses or perceived responses occur because of some kind of lack of reality, lack of perception, really just a response to being overwhelmed at any point in time can be any of that.
In your dealings with Mrs. Miller, how would you describe her reality?
The word that I used earlier, and I think that it really hits home with this, was disheveled. Right? Her reality at the point was disheveled. Her reality at the point was really based on the foundation of religion and God and the things that He was telling her to do.
The discussion that you were having with her during the first and second interview, was that a kind of a reality different from yours, being in a normal state of mind at that time?
Yes, sir.
Now, one of the issues that you brought up on direct was Mrs. Miller asking you to make contact with her husband, Marcus, after we know it at this point, and I'd said he had already gone out into the lake and had passed, right?
Correct.
All right. And
I would object to the characterization in that
I'm sorry, maybe I should phrase it.
When he made that statement, we did not know at that point the whereabouts of either Marcus or Vincent.
That's fair. I'll withdraw the question. Yeah, sorry. Poorly posed question. So, when Mrs. Miller had asked you to contact Marcus, she suggested that he may be at home. Is that correct?
She did at some point, yes.
Okay. And she had you, or suggested that you call his cell phone as well?
Correct.
All right. And was there anything about that interaction that you deemed to, or chalked up to her just trying to be deceitful to you?
No, not necessarily. You know, at that point, I think the details of all of the incidents were in question. And so it was really just trying to determine what the truth was, not that she was necessarily trying to be deceitful.
Might it have been that what you were being told by Mrs. Miller, in her reality, she believed what she was saying?
Might have been, sure.
Now, I told you I'm going to skip around just for a moment, and then I'll get into some semblance of order with you. You had heard the testimony before you about Mrs. Miller trying to run away from the Rangers. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever address with her why she ran from the Rangers?
No, because if I'm being honest with you, at the time that I had my first conversation with her, I had not had any contact with any Rangers, nor did I know that she had ran. And the second conversation, again, there was no discussion of that interaction with her having with the Rangers.
Okay. So as you sit here today, you don't know what her purpose in running away from the Rangers was on August 23rd?
Correct.
And just, did Ruth believe on August 23rd at the time that you went to speak with her? I think she had said to you or it alluded to the fact that she may see her child and husband again?
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to suggest to you that she believed that her husband and child were still alive when you spoke, you would not have an opinion one way or the other?
Your Honor, I guess I would object to the extent that the questions call for speculation as to the mental state of Ruth Miller or anyone. We only know what she told us in terms of what she believed and was that delusional or not. I mean, that's something that goes to speculation as to mental state, and she's going to be examined. She's in the process of being examined by forensic psychologists to weigh in on that as it relates to competency and sanity. But in terms of a witness who was not inside her mind at the time, I think it calls for speculation.
Thank you, Eric. So, Your Honor, Section 1 on the bond issue deals with the word commit. And we talked in opening statement as to both the act and the mental state being at play. And I had stated at the time, Your Honor, in introduction of what we intended to do here today, that I would be focused on the mental state because without it, she could not have committed the crime. Hence, that is the reason why the NGRI was put into play. So mental state is an issue when the issue of no bond is raised. It may not be in other instances or if a bond had been set, but here under this statute, when we break down the word commit, mental state does come into play.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection, maybe for reasons slightly different than what Ian has stated here, but I do believe that the statute does contemplate a consideration of the accused's mental condition, and I'm going to allow it.
Thank you. So I'll come back to that question in a minute. And detective, and is that detective or captain detective? How do you,
whichever you prefer.
Or what do you prefer? You've earned it.
There's a lot there, so I shortened to one. Captain is great.
Captain, very good. So Captain Fisher, you've got 19 years of experience, I believe, before being a detective, or 19 in total?
19 in total.
Okay. All right. And your experience with mental health matters, you seem to indicate you had training beyond that, which one we just received from the academy. Specifically, you've got certification or training in forensic psychology.
Yes.
Okay. What other training do you have as it relates to mental health matters within law enforcement and mental health crises?
Where we have been watching a bond hearing for a mother accused of drowning her 4-year-old son in a lake.
Prosecutors say that the defendant threw her son into Atwood Lake, saying that she had given her son to the Lord. It happened just hours after Miller's husband drowned in the same lake while swimming. Miller has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity.
Let's go back inside the courtroom. The lead detective is still on the stand. He is under cross-examination by the defense.
The crisis intervention team training hostage negotiator. I am one of our only hostage negotiators here in the county. And then just continuous presentations that I give myself, teachings and others that I receive as to any type of mental health issue or crisis within the county.
All right. And do you have experience with matters where pleas of not guilty by reason of insanity or the mental state of a defendant as to whether it constitutes an NGRI? Have you dealt with those sorts of cases before?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. So this case here in the state of Ohio versus Ruth Miller is the first case in which you've been involved with that the issue of whether or not she was not guilty by reason of insanity is central. This will be the first time?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, prior to August 23rd, 2025, you did not know the family or have any understanding of the Miller family, correct?
That's correct.
And by all accounts, through your investigation, Mrs. Miller was deemed to be a good mom to her 4 children.
Right from their mouths, yes.
Okay. And you received no other evidence that would contradict that? And just to get this out of the way, and while she's not been charged with it, I just want to make sure that you have determined that Mrs. Miller was not responsible for her husband Marcus Miller's death.
That's right.
Can you tell me, Captain, please describe your attempts through your investigation, or by way of your investigation, to understand Ruth Miller's mental health history?
So the mental health history was first brought to us by her own family, suggesting that Ruth had been experiencing some kind of struggles with mental health for approximately the past 6 months. As you're aware, the Amish community addresses mental health and things like that a little differently than us as English. So the documentation or anything like that is generally non-existent. So the family saying that there was some struggles there, the family suggesting that she was seeing a doctor, potentially taking some medication. They could not provide any other information as to who that doctor was or what medication it would be for any further follow-up. And they were described to the Miller family was described to be very private, and that not even their own family would know that information.
And were you able to make any determinations as to how Ruth Miller's mental history played into the incident of August 23rd, 2025?
So the discussions that were had surrounding the previous 6 months of some mental health history were some conversations about misinterpreting of the Bible, some misinterpretation there, some believing that God was coming back very soon to get your affairs in order. And that the family and the bishop and others had had these interventions to talk to Ruth and ultimately Marcus and redirect them on a path that was more appropriate. So I think the conversations about the religious aspects of her mental health issues and then the statements made by her the day of the incident saying that God had told her or directed her to do things really coincides with that. So that was the same thing that she had been experiencing.
Okay. And in fact, the family and the bishop were actually very worried about Ruth's mental well-being, and Marcus's for that matter, when they did an intervention just days before being present at Atwood Lake.
Correct.
Yet they felt that perhaps a change of scenery, that going to Atwood Lake might be good for them.
Yes, and that was actually a conversation that Robert had had. Robert is Marcus's brother. Robert had. He was involved in one of that latest intervention, and described that Marcus was a workaholic, and that's all they ever did was work. So that may be a different, change of scenery, someplace different, a place to relax, to release some stress may be helpful.
So, with your interview of the 3 children, it was described, I believe, by the daughter, perhaps, that her mom was frantic when she came to the campground. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you seek any clarification on what that meant?
So, not when they came to the campground, but it was the day that Marcus had left in the morning, so on the 23rd, that she had awoken and that she said that her mom appeared frantic. And when there was further discussion about that,
Michael, this to me is the important piece when they start talking about other family members suggesting she had mental health issues.
Yeah, not only that, and I'm thinking about it in terms of the trial. This is all great information for the defense.
Right, I know. They get a free look, so to speak, at what is going to be coming. All right, next we'll have more of the bond hearing for Ruth Miller in Ohio. Stay tuned. Court TV, your front row seat to justice. For a woman accused of drowning her 4-year-old son, prosecutors say that Ruth Miller threw her son into the lake just hours after her husband drowned in the same lake while he was swimming. When the police arrived, they say she told them she gave the child to the Lord. Miller is pleading not guilty by reason of insanity.
All right, let's take you back inside that courtroom now. The lead detective in the case is on cross-examination, testifying about what family members had said about Ruth's mental health.
clarified that she felt. She wasn't sure, but she felt that it was because her mom had not seen her dad and didn't know where she was. The fact that he was, quote unquote, missing.
And as it related, you had said during direct examination that initially, when Vincent wanted to go with Mrs. Miller, she said no.
Yes, according to Amber, that was something that had caught her attention, was that Ruth had told him no initially.
And as it relates to time, this would have been moments before Vincent was put in the lake?
Yes.
And so what we know, at least from what was told you, that Ruth was not intending on taking Vincent, at least initially, but only after, do you know how much time passed before she decided to take him?
No, I don't. The way it would be perceived by me, or the way that it was suggested, was that Vincent had asked to go, Ruth told him no, and then decided to take him back. So whatever we can make that period of time, it did not seem very significant at all.
Okay. Did you ever receive any evidence to suggest that she had asked Vincent to go? That Mrs. Miller had asked Vincent to go to the lake or with her?
No, other than her own testimony saying that she had put him in the golf cart and transported him down there. That was the only other conversation.
Okay. So I want to talk to you for a moment about whether your investigation revealed that Mrs. Miller believed that her child was actually dead when she placed the child in the lake, okay? And so my question to you is this. You spoke to Amber, and Amber told you that her mom believed that the child, that being Vincent, would actually come back out of the water if they had enough faith in God.
Right.
And for all you know, Mrs. Miller truly believed that.
Correct.
Because her reality may have been very different from yours or mine or any of the other first responders that day, not to suggest that was there.
I would object, Your Honor. I think we're going down the lines of, for all you know, that's complete speculation. We really need someone who's an expert forensic psychologist to explore those issues. So in terms of the testimony should be limited to what he knows, not for what, for all we know, this could be the case.
I'll ask.
Brian, hold on. I recognize that Adam is not an expert. I'll give you the weight that I believe it deserves. I understand if there were others who may be confused by that. I understand your point, but I recognize he has limits as to what he knows, and I'll give it the weight it deserves.
Very good.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I touched on it.
Certainly.
Did your investigation also reveal that Ruth believed that her husband, Marcus, would reappear at some point?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that, please.
In one brief conversation or one brief statement that Ruth had made, she suggested that they were going to the lighthouse. Remember, I spoke of the lighthouse in the marina, that they were going to the lighthouse because she was told by God to go there and she would see Vincent and Marcus again.
Thank you. And it was suggested to you, was it not, by Amber, that her mom was mentally unstable?
Yes.
Okay. And did you seek clarity on what that meant?
Amber used the statement of struggling with mental stability, I think is how she put it. And she just said that Amber noticed that her mom would have good days and bad days, and that on the bad days she would sleep a lot and was very sad. That was, and again at 15, I think that was probably the extent of what she knows.
Sure. And it was described to you by Amber that on that day, August 23rd, that her mom was acting different than normal.
Yes.
Now, did you speak to the Rangers as part of your investigation?
Just in passing, quite honestly. My focus was on Ruth and then locating Vincent and Marcus. And there was a team of detectives that are out there. So, others have spoken and had conversations with them as well. I did not feel that it was necessary at that point for me to.
Now, as the lead detective, you're responsible for this case, correct? All right. And
still with us, criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer. Josh, let me ask you this. This is a bond hearing, and so the defense said at the beginning of this hearing that there was no substantial risk to the community if she were allowed out. But I think this cross-examination, this testimony, hurts that position because they're saying she had good days, she had bad days, she'd sleep a lot on bad days, she might have been taking meds. All of these things to me say, wait a minute, I think she is a risk to the community.
It's not just that she is a risk or presents a risk. It's how does that relate to the rest of the community and criminal justice at large? Because remember, there are lots of dangerous people wandering around in our communities that are a danger to themselves or others, just not at that exact moment. And the courts are very clear. You're not supposed to be punished by being incarcerated pretrial. It is for specific factors that involve things like likelihood to commit another crime, safety of the community, things like that, because you're supposed to really benefit from your presumption of innocence, and being incarcerated prior to trial is a tremendous hardship that prevents you, really, from exercising your constitutional rights. So the court wants her to be out if it's appropriate. And that's really the admissions that are coming out now, that it's not appropriate sometimes, but it's absolutely appropriate other. And there's not going to be a perfect answer. The judge is going to have to make a tough call about whether even allowing her to have access to the outside world is a betrayal of the obligations he holds to the community.
You know, one of the interesting things about these types of hearings, these preliminary and probable cause hearings, is that there are lax evidence rules. And you heard there an objection by the state regarding some opinions being given by this detective who has no medical training, but the judge allowed him to talk about what his thoughts were regarding the activities of this woman and how he thought she was working mentally. Talk a little bit about those lax rules and how that helps in this process, and it's important to this process.
It's one of the most overlooked, and you're totally knocking this out of the park, Michael, one of the most overlooked tools you can use, because your case has started, your defense has started, the prosecution has started, and those lax rules and kind of less formal procedures, that's how the fishing expeditions catch whoppers. And you really can make huge hay out of the information you gain during these less than prepared initial hearings. You get the opportunity to really take advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, this case, and Michael, there's going to be a lot to come in this case. We have only scratched the little tiny surface of this. All right, Josh Schiffer, thank you so much for all your great expertise today.
Folks, stick around. Coming up, more testimony from the lead detective testifying in the bond hearing for Ruth Miller. Investigators say that Miller told them that she threw her child into Atwood Lake to, quote, give him to God. She has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and now she wants out of jail.
The hearing is still underway. Let's go back to court. The lead detective, Adam Fisher, is still on the stand, cross-examination by the defense.
Are you familiar with Caden Edwards?
Yes.
Okay, and who is that?
Caden is a deputy with our office.
Okay. And it is true that Caden opined, based upon his involvement in this case, that Mrs. Miller was, quote, not in her correct state of mind.
Yes.
Okay. Did you talk to Deputy Edwards about his basis for that statement?
Yes. So the conversation that he and I had, Caden is a newer deputy here. So he and I talk frequently as life goes on or as he interacts with people on calls. And so when we spoke about this particular thing, he spoke of my words, Ruth's disjointed statements about the Marcus being in the belly of a fish on the bottom of the lake, and things that to him did not make sense.
Now, I believe, well, if you could answer this for me, who determined that there needed to be a mental health evaluation of Ruth Miller on that day?
I can't answer that. So I know that collectively, I think that was the push to put Ruth in the back of the squad to have her evaluated. The formal decision for a mental evaluation was done by Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital.
Now, kind of pivoting here for a moment to the golf cart, which you're aware of, the driving of the golf cart. Did you look into, or as part of your investigation, that deal with the operation of the golf cart?
Yes.
All right. And do you agree with the descriptions that have been given and throughout your reports and others that Mrs. Miller operated the golf cart, quote, erratically?
Yes.
At any point, did Mrs. Miller crash that golf cart to any other part of the grounds other than just going off the dock?
Yes. So there was a conversation and a description that Ruth was observed to be operating the golf cart erratically, that at one point she had even tipped the golf cart over on its side. She had gone back to the camper to retrieve her 18-year-old sons to get them to come back and help her lift the golf cart back up, which they did, and then she proceeded to drive that golf cart.
Did she ever hit any other obstacles that day with the golf cart?
Not that I can recall.
Now, were you involved in the gathering or execution of the search warrant on August 24th?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me what your involvement was with the search warrants? And there will be just some specific questions, not so much as to probable cause on a search warrant, but solely as to two pieces of evidence that was examined.
Sure. So the search warrant itself was sought after by me, simply as a matter of procedure. Let's just make sure that there's nothing else in this camper that's going to give us any kind of insight into the case. So the search warrant was obtained. Our process throughout the sheriff's office, for a matter of efficiency, is there were two detectives that were already on scene. So the search warrant was signed, a phone call is made to say the search warrant has been granted, and they entered the camper, proceeded to complete an inventory, take photographs, document the things that were there. While that was happening, I responded to Atwood, and I arrived at the tail end of that execution of the search warrant.
Now, there were different tents, I believe, that were searched. One being tent, and I'd like to refer to tent 1 and tent 3.
So the tents that you're describing are tents with numbers on them. So anytime that we execute a search warrant, if we find something of interest, we will tenant with that number to then photograph it, draw some attention to it, photograph it, and then be able to label it accurately on that inventory that you're likely looking at.
Thank you. And what I'd like to talk to you about is there was a Bible that was found, that was located as part of the search.
Yes.
Okay. And that Bible was not taken, but it was merely photographed, right?
Correct.
Right. I just don't have it yet, or if it has been given over, I apologize, I haven't seen it yet. Is there a photograph of the Bible in the open position?
Yes, sir, there is.
So that we are able to determine what may have been viewed last in that Bible?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall what that was?
I don't.
That's okay. The other thing that I'd like to bring your attention to is tent 3, which were described as over-the-counter supplements. Do you recall that?
Yes.
All right. Those were not taken into evidence either. They were just photographed.
Correct.
Do we know what those supplements were or why they were being taken?
No, I do not know why they were being taken, what they were. To tell you that off the top of my head, the answer is no. It is documented specifically what those were.
Okay, thank you. Now, during your 2 interviews of Ruth, you would agree with me that the statements that she made to you were unclear at times?
Yes.
Okay. And an example of that lack of clarity would be Ruth telling you that they were in the water, they being presumably a reference to Vincent and her husband, but in heaven, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And prior to that, would you agree with the assertion that Ruth began talking to law enforcement immediately at Atwood Lake when approached?
Yes.
She never tried to deny that the son or husband were in the water, correct?
Correct.
She was clear that she did throw Vincent in the lake, correct?
Yes.
But after that, when being questioned, Ruth spent a lot of time trying to emphasize her reaction to that was that she was emphasizing that God is real.
Yes.
And that she gave her son to God because it was a test from God.
Correct.
Now, what is the word, and based upon your training and as it was used in this investigation, what does the word irrational mean to you?
Irrational to me would mean not in a normal, and that's a word response also, but not a normal way of thinking, not a common way of thinking.
And I think that you had stated, or did you state, I should ask, that it was due to her behavior and irrational thought process that Ruth was pink slipped to the Cleveland Clinic?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know who saw the pig slip at the Cleveland Clinic?
I don't.
Did you talk to any of the medical staff at the Cleveland Clinic about their treatment or determinations of Ruth Miller?
So my initial response to Cleveland Clinic, I had a very brief discussion with the doctor. I informed him of our response, the fact that there were two missing individuals, a few of the things that Ruth was saying, and I simply made a request to speak with Ruth before they offered her any type of treatment so that I could try to get any information. Specifically asking determinations of medical procedures or treatment is frowned upon in any kind of hospital. There have been search warrants submitted to Cleveland Clinic, so we have those official records. However, the conversations don't generally happen to us specifically.
Thank you. Now, Captain, you had spoken on direct examination about the sheet that was over Mrs. Miller's face at the hospital. It is true that Mrs. Miller kept the sheet on her face and would keep the sheet on her face until she was reconnected with her husband.
Yes, she made that statement.
All right, and she made that statement to you?
Yes.
All right. And the reason that she was going to keep the sheet on her face, or withdraw that question. She stated further to you that at some point they, and that presumed to be Marcus, she and Marcus would tell their story.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ask her to clarify that statement or give any further detail on that statement?
There was a question, to something of the sort of what does that mean, where is he? And she could not provide an answer any different than what she had already provided.
Okay. Now, you had spoken on direct examination about the bishop or family members talking about Mrs. Miller's difficulty sleeping. Do you recall that?
The difficulty sleeping conversation came from Amber. Yes.
From Amber, I apologize. So what did you do as part of your investigation to determine whether or not there was any validity to that statement and how it may have affected Ruth Miller's mental state on August 23rd?
I don't know that there was anything else to do at that point with Ruth being in custody at the jail and represented by you. I don't know that it's appropriate to have that conversation with her. So I think just the statement from Amber alone is what it is.
Their experience was with Mrs. Miller and whether she was suffering from sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
Now, as it relates to the tests in the water with Marcus, so the tests with Mrs. Miller and Mr. Miller, Marcus, it was communicated to you that any failures to these tests were due to doubts in God.
Yes.
By Mrs. Miller, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I would like to talk about an instance where it was communicated to you, believe that Mrs. Miller tried to actually walk on water.
Yes.
All right, do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. What was told you and where was that?
It was in the hospital room, and it came directly from Ruth, that she was explaining that one of her tests from God was to walk on water, and that she hesitated, and that her doubt in God, the hesitation, is what caused her the inability to walk on water.
Now, we do know, at least based upon what she said, let me say, no one saw her trying to walk on water, presumably, correct?
Correct.
Right. And you were also told by Mrs. Miller that when she did try to walk on the water, she was actually wearing her clothes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And because she was wearing the clothes, once she went under the water, it was difficult to swim because of the weight of the clothes.
Yes.
Now, you had brought up the sheriff, Sheriff Orvis Campbell, calling you, I believe on Saturday. It was Saturday, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not getting into necessarily what the job, duties were and so forth. But my question to you is, were you present for his press conference that followed the arrest of Mrs. Miller?
I was.
Okay. And Sheriff Campbell was very involved in this investigation as well, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you and he had communicated back and forth as to findings in this case?
Correct.
And it was described by the sheriff that Ruth Miller, or he opined that there was a detachment from reality. Okay, I'm not asking you as to what he said. Do you recall that being said?
I do.
Okay. Do you agree that the evidence in this case that was gathered pointed to a detachment from reality by Mrs. Miller?
I do.
And Sheriff Campbell had also opined during this very press conference that the investigation pointed to the fact that Mrs. Miller was delusional on August 23rd, 2025. Do you recall that?
I do.
And do you agree with Sheriff Campbell that Mrs. Miller, or that the investigation evidences that Mrs. Miller was delusional on August 23rd, 2025?
I do.
And Sheriff Campbell had also talked about the fact that what had been conveyed to law enforcement, so I assume you, since you did the interviews, by Mrs. Miller, had panned out to be truthful, specifically what was described about Marcus, his actions, what he was wearing, and so forth.
Yes.
And was there anything during your investigation that revealed at any time that Mrs. Miller was being untruthful with you or attempting to deceive you?
No.
Now, there's some other factors that we have to address here today. You obviously did a background check on Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Right. And that revealed no prior criminal history.
Correct.
We talked earlier on about her being a good mother. There were no reports from anyone, negative reports from anyone related to ill treatment of any of the children prior to August 23rd, 2025.
Correct.
All right, now looking through your records, you, Captain, determined that Ruth Miller was experiencing a mental health crisis as she could not provide clear information, correct?
Correct.
And what was, when you said she was experiencing a mental health crisis, as it relates to Ruth Miller, what were you trying to say in that? What was the mental health crisis that you were referring to in your report?
I think it just goes back to the words that you said. There was a detachment from reality. There was some delusional thinking, which obviously, led to the unfortunate events of that.
Here now to discuss with us criminal defense attorney Lara Yaretsian. Thank you so much for being on with both of us. Some of this testimony really stood out to me, and that is that one of the daughters, the older teenage daughter, said her mom believed that Vincent, the 4-year-old she threw into the lake, would come back from the lake. The mother also believed her husband, who had drowned, would reappear, and the child said that the mother was acting different than usual on that date. Do those facts lend towards the insanity defense?
100%. And you also have the lead detective basically supporting that notion as well. He is testifying that she was detached from reality, that she was delusional, and we also have information that she's never hurt the children before, and she's never mistreated them before. She does have mental health issues, but never been violent. Nobody had been concerned about any violence or harm to others. So yes, I mean, I can see a lot of this lending support to an insanity defense, and also some support to the defense request that she be released on bond.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my question. Does it actually help with the question of the day, which is the fact that should she be released on bond in this case? And if so, how?
This could be a double-edged sword, right? Because it sounds like someone who's delusional would be a risk, right, to public safety. However, if they can maybe request certain conditions of release to attach to the release, including that she be on her meds, that she see psychiatrists, therapists, maybe be on house arrest, be closely supervised, and as long as she's under prescriptions and she abides by specific rules and conditions, whatever they may be, right, to keep her in a safe environment and to ensure public safety, then yes, she could be released despite some of these issues, because we don't have any prior issues from her. We don't have any prior violence or any other indication that she could be violent. She was basically detached from reality, delusional. And we can tell that the argument would be that she didn't really mean to harm her child, but she, especially when she believes that the child would come back. But again, as long as you can keep the person under control, meaning with the right supervision, they can make that argument that it's safe for her to be released and she wouldn't be a flight risk.
I think she has to have the right treatment. Just quickly, I did want to ask you, a substantial risk to the community is one of the things they consider today. What about a substantial risk to herself? Is that something that could cause a judge to say, in your opinion, nope, she is staying in jail?
It's probably one of the factors that the court would consider, but of course the priority is always the risk to the community. But I'm sure that the judge will consider that too. But again, the solution is one and the same. As long as she is in the right program or is seeing the right mental health, is in the right mental health facility or at home getting the right treatment, is complying with any medications, prescription medications that she has, sees her psychiatrist, she's her therapist, and does everything that the court is ordering her, then she wouldn't be a risk to herself or to the public. Just because someone has a mental health issue doesn't mean that they're going to be, they're posing a risk. As long as they get the treatment they need, they would be fine.
Yeah, that's always the risk, though. That's always the risk. Ruth Miller is charged with aggravated murder and domestic violence in connection with the death of her 4-year-old son last month. But she claims she was insane at the time.
Her attorneys are now fighting to have her released on bond. The lead detective is wrapping up his testimony. Let's go back in.
You're familiar with the term malingering?
Yes.
Okay, and what does that mean to you?
Malingering is something that's like persistent or continuing.
Did you ever perceive any of what Mrs. Miller told you or the way that she was telling you? Did you ever determine that to be suspect or suspicious or an attempt to deceive you? Anything that was not genuine?
No.
Now, you had talked about on direct interview 2, and you had said that Mrs. Miller seemed to be much more coherent during that interview.
On the second one, yes.
On the second, yes. All right. And Mrs. Miller did not change any of her facts from interview 1 to interview 2, but she did add some facts to interview 2, correct?
Correct.
And what Ruth added to you was that she was actually talking to God on August 23rd. So she was actually having a conversation with God.
Correct.
And she had elaborated to you that God, and her words were, as per the report, quote, he wanted us to do something, and that happened before midnight coming into the critical day.
Yes.
And she had told you, Captain, that she had been witness to miracles lately.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ask her to clarify what that meant and what miracles she may have observed?
You know, I recall having that conversation, but I don't recall what her response was.
Okay. As far as approximation of time, how long before the incident? When I use the word incident, I'm speaking of August 23rd, 2025. Do you know how long it was before that she was witnessing these miracles?
I don't.
And in fact, not only did Mrs. Miller talk about Marcus and the fish, but she also added during the second interview that God had asked her to get swallowed by a fish.
She did.
Okay. And did you have her give you any further detail on that, or were you at this point just noting what she was saying?
So I was noting what she was saying. She did explain in this particular instance that God had asked her to be swallowed by a fish, that she, again, had some hesitation, did not want that to happen, made a statement that if God wanted her to, that she would.
Right. So she actually was willing, as she told you, she was actually willing, if God wanted her to be swallowed by a fish.
Yes.
And there was nothing about that you took as her being trying to be dishonest or just disingenuous in any way?
No.
As far as physically is concerned, well, I can't say necessarily physically. The question that I have for you is, Mrs. Miller had also described to you that her head had hurt and was full of water. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us about that statement, please?
She had made that statement after talking about the test that God was giving she and Marcus on the dock, and after they had been in the water, that's when she had said that after they had removed themselves from the water and were walking back to the camper, that's when her head was full of water and her head hurt.
Now, during director, you talked about the child coming back up above the water?
Yes.
Okay. And was there any sort of discussion about Ruth trying to reach out to the child?
So the first conversation, she spoke of looking at him, being questioned by God, turning and walking away. The second conversation, she said that she attempted to reach down for Vincent and could not.
For everyone's benefit, what I intend to do is decide the issue of whether the state is correct that there should be no bail. If I ultimately disagree with the state's request for no bail, the issue of what is the appropriate bail then is still an issue. In your statements, if you could address both of those issues, I would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Under the statute that authorizes this court to deny bail in certain circumstances, and this would be one of those circumstances where a defendant is charged with aggravated murder. The main focus is on the safety of the community. In the context of the standard that you articulated earlier, that is, the state has the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that the proof is evident, or the presumption great, that Ruth Miller committed the crime of purposely killing Vincent Miller, her 4-year-old son. That she is a substantial risk of causing serious physical harm either to herself or others, and that no release conditions would reasonably assure this court of the safety of herself or others. And so, Your Honor, I began by saying this is not a whodunit, or even what did she do. This is a mother who had struggled with some stressors in her life, some mental health issues, reportedly, such that it had concerned her family and her church, and they had some intervention the morning before they left for Atwood. and felt that they had gained some headway, that it was somewhat beneficial, that it would be good for them to get away and decompress, and certainly had no idea that something like this would happen. It seems very clear that also they had a good day on the boat Friday, but that Friday night, when the kids were in bed in the camper, that Ruth and her husband felt some inspiration to go out to the dock and do some tests of their faith, and they did that. And then later in the morning, they came back to the camper, that she reports that Marcus left again on his own volition to swim to the sandbar and never came back, is what she, and that was the last time she saw him, is what she said. She ends up going out to the pontoon. She says that she witnesses his clothes left on the pontoon. The same clothes that responding officers also saw on the pontoon. And the same clothes that Marcus Raber said at approximately 6:30 a.m. he saw Marcus Miller wearing when he confused him to be Bobby Miller. But when Ruth went out there, her husband was not there, is her report, and that she began to spiral. And she went back and she got her son Vincent, and she took him to the dock. And she's very clear in her statements to Adam Fisher at the hospital as to what she did. It may have been somewhat vague in the field to the initial responders, that I threw him in, that I gave him to God, but she was very clear with Adam at the hospital. And that is, she said that she felt she should throw him in the water, that she threw him in, that he came back up to the surface and looked at her, and that she questioned whether she should be doing this. And her statement to Adam at the hospital was that she felt that God was telling her to walk away, and she turned around and walked away. Now, then she went back and got her other children and brought them out, had them perform some tests, that they were praying intently near the kayak dock, that they got into the golf cart and then raced down to the bistro and over the rock embankment and into the water. And that's when the 911 call came, and that's when we get involved. At the scene of where she wrecked the golf cart, it's very clear that she was uttering many things, such as her husband and son are in the water, that she gave them to God, that it was concerning. The Rangers directed her to show them where that was, and she began with the children to walk away from that area. But quickly that accelerated into a dead sprint, according to the ranger. And they essentially got away from the Rangers and the one deputy who had responded. And Ruth was missing for nearly 30 minutes and found eventually lying face down in high weeds. And when she is recovered, she continues to talk about these irrational thoughts about that she was doing the will of God, that she had given her husband and her child to God, that she threw her child off the dock, is what she said in her excited utterances when she was recovered from hiding or from lying down in the high grass. But it's interesting that she's missing for a half hour, that she's has a lot to say to bystanders and to initial responders right after the crash, that she has a lot to say to initial responders and bystanders when she's recovered from the high weeds. But she's remarkably quiet and undetected for 30 minutes until she is found. There's no question who done it and what she did. And the defense has made some remark of whether she committed the act, as that word is construed in the law. I would urge the court to take into consideration the law as it relates to natural consequences. And juries are instructed on this in many cases. A defendant's responsibility is not limited to the immediate or most obvious result of the defendant's act or failure to act. The defendant is responsible for the natural and foreseeable consequences that follow in the ordinary course of events from acts or failure to act. So her act was to throw her son off the dock, her 4-year-old son, who couldn't swim well, if he could swim at all. That was an act, and there's a natural consequence to that act. Whether she was delusional or whether she was malingering, at this point, it really doesn't matter. That will be determined later at another juncture, I presume, when we determine competency and insanity. But for purposes of this hearing, it doesn't matter whether she was honestly delusional or whether she was malingering. The natural consequences of throwing a 4-year-old into the water is that he'll drown if not saved. And then when he resurfaces and he looks at her, and then she decides for whatever reason to walk away, the natural consequence is that she acted and she had an omission as well that caused his death. And the natural consequence is that that's her purpose. She's imputed with that purpose. So that's why I say this is not a whodunit. I think the proof is overwhelming whodunit and what she did. The real question is whether there are any release conditions, if you were to release her into the community, that could assure this court that she's not a risk of serious physical harm to herself or others. Now, we have just received both the defense and the state medical records from Cleveland Clinic Hospital, and you've not heard anyone testify from Cleveland Clinic that they can assure you that there are some measures that could be put in place to safeguard not only Ruth, but her family members and the community. You've not heard that. That's not on the record. In fact, I think I can say that the records are fairly voluminous at both Union and Marymount. That she said a lot of things to a lot of hospital personnel. A lot of things consistent with what's been said here today and what she said to investigators and even more. That while she was in hospital care, she was generally regarded as polite and compliant, if not pleasant at times. And that she expressed that she couldn't believe what she did. At one point she said, the devil got to me in the moment. So, but again, whether God made her do it, whether the devil made her do it, whether she's faking it, or whether she's honestly delusional, for purposes of today, it doesn't matter. What matters is there's nothing that can assure this court that she's not going to have some break again based on whatever, based on a lack of sleep, based on misinterpretations of the Bible, based on something beyond what we're even discussing here today. It doesn't matter. What matters is, can she give some assurance to the court that this isn't going to happen again? And, Your Honor, given the gravity of what happened here, there is no ankle monitor that's going to assure the court that she is not a harm to herself or her family members.
All right, before we take a break, folks, the judge has declared a mistrial in the plotting parents murder trial for Jeffrey Spence in Mississippi. 3 hours into deliberations, jurors told the judge that they were deadlocked, and then he sent them back to continue deliberating. They were 6-6 at that time. After another hour and a half, they returned again, saying they could not reach a unanimous decision, still at 6-6. Now, Spence was accused of killing his daughter's boyfriend, Kirby Carpenter, in December of 2022. Carpenter's mother, she was in court and testified at trial. She became very emotional after the judge's decision and then later collapsed, and an ambulance had to be called. Meantime, Spence was not released. The judge ordered him to remain in custody while prosecutors decide if they will retry him. All right, coming up next here on Court TV, the state finishes its closing argument, and then the defense makes an impassioned plea to the judge to grant Ruth Miller pretrial release. The bond hearing continues after this break. Keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Whatever the word may be, that's my word, that she was undergoing. So where best to treat that would be at a facility that treats mental health illness. And I totally agree with the prosecutor that there has been no evidence to suggest that how she acted at the hospital. We heard about what was heard and so forth and so forth. But the burden being on the state is that they had to show that there is no other reason. Not that it had to be shown that there were alternatives, but it had to be shown by clear convincing evidence that there were no release conditions that would reasonably assure the safety of that person in the community. There is nothing to state that she did not do well at the Cleveland Clinic. There's nothing to state that at all. That burden rests with the state to show that if it did. She never posed a risk before. By all accounts, this was an isolated incident that came as a result of what was going on in her mind. I think to say that there are no release conditions, I think that's a little too far because she did do fine. There's nothing to suggest she didn't at the Cleveland Clinic. She's doing fine now. And so when she's getting the care, when she's getting the regimen, when she's getting medication, and if she were able to get the care of mental health professionals to the level that she's going to need, because we're talking about conduct that quite likely constitutes that of not guilty by reason of insanity. And with all due respect, the jails in Ohio and throughout this country don't have the resources to treat that level of illness. The facilities do. So you would ask, Your Honor, what do we suggest? I don't suggest that Ruth be just released back to the public. I do not suggest that an ankle monitor is sufficient. I don't believe it is until Your Honor is supplied with additional information. That information would come from an inpatient facility. And an inpatient facility could include institutions like going back to, well, actually, what I'd like to do, Your Honor, is give you the general, what we're seeking, and if the court is amenable to it, what I would ask to do is to notify the court under seal of exactly the places that she would go. It just makes more sense, because part of this is also, once it's determined appropriate by the inpatient treatment, and that's after they have substantiated medication and the counseling, that should be stepped down only by court order to release with home arrest, not just GPS monitoring, and also that in combination with outpatient treatment continue. So what this looks like, again, because I did say that rather confusingly, is going to inpatient treatment, whether that be the clinic, Recreate Ohio, Highland Springs, Sunrise Vista Behavioral, that can be done with an ankle monitor, if that needs to be. And then if there comes a point where the hospital says that she is stable, that she does not pose a threat, and we have the battery of documentation to support that, we would come back to the court to ask for movement from there to address with family members. Again, I'll disclose that if the court would like it now, or I can certainly put it under seal, but locally, family members with house arrest and with continued outpatient treatment.
Consider the following. There's 4 of them. They're kind of long, but I think it's worth going through them. Number 1, the nature and circumstances of the offense charged, whether the offense is an offense of violence or involves alcohol or drugs. There's no indication here that alcohol or drugs were involved, but there is also no dispute that murder and felonious assault are offenses of violence. The weight of the evidence, number 2, against the accused in this case. I'm going to conclude that the weight is significant against you in this matter, that in fact you carried out the offense of felonious assault and in this case, at least for today's purposes, murder. 3, the history and characteristics of the accused, including but not limited to the following. I'm to consider these, and I have, your character, to the extent that I can, at a bail hearing. Character, physical and mental condition, family ties, employment, financial resources, length of residence in the community, your community ties, past conduct, history related to drugs and alcohol, and criminal history of the accused. I know of no criminal history. I don't know of any reason to believe you don't have a strong connection to the community. I've taken that into consideration. I've taken into consideration the fact that a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, a number of people, at least who have testified here today, they would at a minimum had raised an eyebrow as to your mental condition on the date in question. I am also to consider whether at the time of the offense, whether or not you were under supervision of any point in time. You clearly were not being supervised by another court at that time. So I've considered it. Lastly, the nature and seriousness of the danger to any person or the community that would be posed by the person's release. Those apply to whether or not you pose a substantial risk of serious physical harm, whether the state has met that burden. And Ruth, in my assessment in this matter, I am coming to the conclusion that the state has presented clear and convincing evidence that you do pose a substantial risk of serious physical harm to any other person or the community, and that there are no release conditions that will reasonably assure the safety of that person in the community. And I'm going to tell you why. In this case, you were told, at least by the evidence that I've heard so far, that there were people in the community who had concerns. The bishop was concerned. Your family was concerned. They tried to intervene. They tried to have you listen to reason with them. And I think by clear and convincing evidence, you did not listen to the bishop. You did not listen to your family. And Ruth, I don't think you'd listen to me if I put conditions upon you in the community. You listened in this case to what you believed God was telling you to do based upon the testimony that I've heard to this point in time. And that does not leave me assured that you will follow my conditions. For that reason, I am going to deny bail in this case. I'm going to have you held in the Tuscarawas County Jail while this matter is pending. The statute, though, it does, and regardless, the issue of bail is one that could be reviewed And I don't mean to plant any type of false hope that I would somehow change my mind and have a personal recognizance. That's not what I'm trying to do here, Ruth. But really, for the first time, at the end of this hearing, I heard for the first time that there may be a place that you could go to other than the Tuscarawas County Jail for which the community could be assured of the safety of others, and that you would not pose that substantial risk of harm to others. And I'm open to that idea. I simply know nothing about that idea at this time other than it was floated at the very end of the hearing. So that's my ruling at this time. But as I do in any case, regardless if it's aggravated murder or a low-level felony, I believe the issue of bail is always open to review. And if there is a suggestion, I'm sorry, if there's more than a suggestion, there's a plan in place that would give me that confidence that I don't have right now, I would consider it. If there's nothing further, I'm sorry, the issue of the no contact line. I'm sorry, we are just going to have to agree to disagree on this issue. I know you've asked before, but my opinion is this: when someone is being held without bail and on aggravated murder, I only want to put an order in place that I believe I can enforce. And if she were to make phone calls from the jail, I feel as if there's nothing more I can do to her. She's already being held without bail, facing life in prison. So I don't know what teeth, I can put into it if someone doesn't listen to me. If someone, though, persists in calling from the jail and you believe they are in some way interfering with this case in some way, I would consider that placing an order with the jail to not allow phone calls to be made in general. But at this point in time, I just simply don't believe a no contact order when there is no bail is enforceable. Anything further?
Just two issues. Your Honor, please just note our objection for the record.
Noted.
Secondly, as far as transcripts are concerned, how would you like us to?
You want to direct that to?
Perfect.
Ms. White.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good week.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Judge.
All right, so as you just heard, Ruth Miller denied bond. And as for that no contact order, the judge said he's not going to put it in place because he has no means to enforce it. So if she wanted to speak with or talk to her children on the phone, sounds like she will be able to do that. Still with me, attorney and former prosecutor Randolph Rice. Randolph, your reaction to the judge's decision. I was a little surprised by that last part. It sounds like he might have wanted to put some sort of no contact order in place, but said he had no real strength to enforce it. I think maybe there was some compassion in there as well, saying, look, she can talk to her children. She's already being held without bail.
Yeah, that's one possibility, Michael. I will say this, and I've had this happen to me hundreds of times, that when a judge rules against me and my client so badly, it just goes horribly for me and my client, oftentimes judges will give you a win in a really insignificant way by saying, well, you know what, I'm going to grant the defense's motion to allow you to still have contact. And, your client may think you may have helped out and won a little bit on that hearing. So maybe it was just the judge throwing the defense a bone here.
He threw them another bone, Randolph, which I found interesting. At the end of Ian Friedman, the defense attorney's argument, he talked about some kind of facility that could not put her in jail, have her out of jail, but also in some way protect the community. The judge didn't have any information on it, so he couldn't rule on it, but he did say it sounded like he was open to some evidence presenting or some information about this type of place. He said he didn't want to get anybody's hopes up, but it was possible that there might be some opportunity under the right circumstances for her to be released to this type of facility. Did you hear that as well?
I did, Michael, and you were very astute to pick that up, because that's another good point there, good bone that the defense got. Now the problem is a lot of times is that when your client gets arrested and you've got this hearing, it's very difficult to get all the pieces in place to have your client accepted, and the bed and the transportation. And so what the defense is probably going to do is they're going to go back to these facilities and say, hey, can you come evaluate our client? Can you set up all the moving parts to get her to your facility? And then we'll take these reports back to the judge for another bail review and maybe get her transferred for mental health treatment.
So what do they have to do? I mean, that's obvious part of it. Do you think, and again, I thought the judge was pretty clear, look, don't get your hopes up too high. If they bring back enough medical information that this would be the right facility for her, she could, the community could, they could ensure some sense of community safety for the community. What are the chances in your mind that a judge might allow her to go there for the time being as she awaits trial?
Yeah, I think that's probably the better chance, Michael, is that the defense wants to get her at a facility, because my guess is they're gonna make the plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, and so that will be her ultimate endpoint. Why not get her there earlier, start treating her, and then you have something to present to the judge in mitigation, and at least a place to say, hey, look, Judge, when you're going to sentence her and send her to somewhere, this is where she should be. This is where she's been for the past 6 months, and it seems to be working.
And talk about the ability to prepare for trial. You know, oftentimes you'll hear defense attorneys say how difficult it is preparing for trial while someone is in jail under circumstances like this. Does it get easier when they're in a facility like that? You have doctors working with her. I imagine it would be helpful in many ways.
It can be easier in some facilities, because if you're in the jail, typically you're between a big piece of bulletproof glass, you don't have contact. Some jails have computers in them, so you can load information in the computer with a screen and you can show your client. If a facility like this does not have that, that can make it difficult. But at the same time, some of these facilities are so relaxed or laxed that you may have a private meeting room, which is ideal when you're meeting with your client, to sit down, lay everything out, and have those private conversations.
All right. Well, Randolph, thank you so much for that. Truly appreciate it.